So everyone faces that decision.
We go to track and they're looking at the track safety. She blew away.
Like that.
Yeah, but she was always quiet.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
And yours and
If you would please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If I could have a motion to approve the agenda for June 27th, 2022.
Hang on.
Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. All right, who was the first on that? Okay, Angela, second. Eric, thank you.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and I'm going to turn it over to Mike Bennett for an accolade and a recognition for the many, many thanks that we would like to extend to all of you. So with that.
Yes, hi. Again, I'm going to stand for this. I don't know if the mic is going to catch it or not. Beautiful, got the thumbs up. We just wanted to take this opportunity for Rich and all the members of Buildings and Grounds. I think as we've gone through the last 2 years, 2.5 years, we have been through a lot as a school district. And we've had a lot of people who have stepped up, whether it's our IT department, getting our technology out to our houses, whether it's teachers who are flipping classrooms and doing different things as far as education goes with our kids, transportation, getting buses or getting food out to our community. We wanted to make sure that we recognize the hard work that you guys have put in, going above and beyond the normal cleaning day in and day out. COVID had put a lot of extra stress on everyone, but you guys are at the front lines of that. You guys have really taken the time to make sure we're cleaning, we're disinfecting, we're doing everything we need to do so that we could stay open. We didn't have big spread. You guys are a big part of why, and we wanted to, take a moment to thank you for the hard work that you guys do. I know it is beginning of the summer now, and we are without kids, which means you guys are working even harder, making sure that our rooms are where they need to be and we're up to speed come September. But I think that I didn't want you guys to get lost in the shuffle as far as how much we feel thank you was in order for the work that you do. You come in every day, you do the work. I will tell you in my short time here, this has got to be the friendliest group of people. And you guys have always been very helpful to me. You stop me in the hallway, you say hello, you ask how I'm doing, and it's genuine. I recognize that, and I really do appreciate it. You got our buildings and grounds looking great. You got our places clean. So I just wanted to make sure, the board wanted to make sure that we had a night like tonight for you guys, because what you've done has been next level as far as we're concerned in regards to making sure we were able to stay open during COVID. So hats off to all of you, and thank you very much for the work that you've
And please take a cupcake home. Or two.
Hey, guys, I'm not gonna let the cat out of the bag here, but this meeting does get really exciting now. So if you wanted to leave, it's okay if you.
We won't be offended.
We will not be offended if you
You
decide
might
to
be if
leave.
you hang around.
But there are cupcakes, there's food. Please take some of that stuff. But you, at any point, feel free to get up and walk out.
About the third business item.
Thank you. See you down. But do take a cupcake.
Thank you.
Alrighty, I am going to move us on to open forum. The 30-minute open forum is the time the board sets aside to hear in-person comments from the public. Comments may also be emailed in advance of the meeting prior to 4 p.m. on the date of the meeting, and state in the email if you would like your correspondence read out loud. To Daphne Pearson, District Clerk at pearsond@greenvillecsd.org. This is an opportunity for residents to voice general concerns and comments, especially about items on the agenda. However, this is not the time to register complaints about specific individuals or about items that should be addressed confidentially through the proper channels. All comments shall be addressed to the district clerk and shall be limited to not more than 5 minutes per board policy 2180. Please note that members of the board may not be able to directly respond to citizens' concerns during the public open forum. Is there anyone that would like to speak during open forum? I do not see anyone. Do you receive any emails? Okay, then I'm going to move us on to the presentations portion of the agenda. And we have Malcolm to follow, all right, from Needham Risk Management. And with that, he's going to be talking about the district-wide school safety plan. So I'd like to turn it over.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. So first and foremost, thank you all for having me here today. What I want to just take a few minutes of your time to talk about is the district-wide school safety plan. So in New York State, we have 2 different plans that really govern how we conduct school safety throughout the entire state. We have our district-wide school safety plan, which is publicly facing. We post it on our website. Part of the reason that we're presenting it here today is because we are required to have a 30-day public comment period on the district-wide plan. And really what the district-wide plan does, it lays the foundation for everything else that we do in regards to safety and security within our school buildings. It provides a template for how we should talk about it. It provides the ideas on how we respond to school safety. And it gives us an opportunity to make all of our community members aware of what we do. Sort of on the other side of that coin, we have our building level emergency response plan. And while the district-wide plan is publicly facing, the building level plan is confidential. It's really where the meat of our safety and security planning lies. And we update it every year with building administrators, with business officials, with members of the school community to make sure that it's accurate. And then at the beginning of the school year, we make sure that all the information within it is supplied to all of our staff, all of our faculty members, making sure that everybody is trained on it. So with the district-wide plan that we are starting the public comment period for today, this is just the first step. And with this, the draft plan that we have will be posted on the school district's website. And there will be an opportunity for everyone to review the plan that we have, make comments on it. If there's anything that anyone is concerned about, that they would like more information on, that they feel is inaccurate, you can contact the school district and we will examine that and make sure that it's updated. This year, we worked with our district-wide Safety and Health Committee to ensure that the plan was reviewed as a group, which I think is really important. It's very powerful. That committee is made up of members of all different parts of the school community, in each of its buildings, in each of its departments. So it really gives us an opportunity to solicit opinions and to gather information from all different people from all different wakes of the school community, as we work to make sure that this plan is accurate and that this plan does its job in protecting both our students and our visitors, our community members, our staff and faculty members, really working to create this multi-layered and sort of multidisciplinary look at school safety that I think is really important to making sure that we're able to maintain that culture that keeps us safe. So that plan will be available. It'll be up for public comments, and I believe at a subsequent board meeting, we'll put it forward for approval.
One of the things the governor has recently signed some legislation saying panic buttons? I'm not sure. Could you talk a little bit about that, and what are the requirements that might need to be factored in?
Absolutely. So, what we've seen, and I'm unsure if it's going to be mandated yet. My understanding right now is it seems like it's a recommendation. And historically, what we saw with panic buttons, and this goes back really more 15, 20 years ago, is it would be a device that would usually be given to secretaries and people with public-facing positions in the school district, so that if there were somebody that were unruly or had the potential to cause harm or danger to others in the school community, that they could hit that panic button, and you'd see all different ways that it would be implemented. Sometimes it would contact the SRO, sometimes it would contact the building administrator, sometimes it would go straight to the police. And really where we've seen that technology morph, especially over the past 5 years, and Greenville has adopted this technology as well, is it's really evolved into the lockdown button, with the idea being that if there's someone who wants to cause harm, we don't want to add extra steps of, oh, this is going to alert the building administrator or someone else in the school community discreetly. We want to make sure that if there's a threat of danger, that we have the ability to quickly activate our security procedures, quickly alert law enforcement, and really make use of the security technology that we have. So in reality, I think that we're ahead of the game in terms of what is potentially coming down the pipeline.
Thank you. Any other questions or thoughts on the safety plan?
I have only one. Was there anything dramatically different than the previous one?
No, there were no major updates from the state. Really, it was just us making sure that everything that we said we were doing was accurate, making sure that we updated where necessary. But really, I think this year is a lot of just making sure names, titles, dates, all those things were correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Take a donut.
Or a cupcake.
You don't have to tell me twice.
Take one for your wife.
All right, now I'd like to take and turn it over to the administrative team to provide an end-of-year report.
So as our team is coming up to the table, I just want to let the board know that as the year-end reporting out, these guys have been busy over the last week or two gathering year-end data to kind of put this together. We met for a couple hours this morning, finalizing some of the conversations. So I will turn it over to Todd and let him begin his presentation with the leadership team.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Good evening, everybody. So we are here, as Mike said, to share our end-of-year report. This is the second year that we've done it in this format, where we use this meeting in June to give a high-level overview of the year that we just completed. So as Mike said, we have very much been completing out the year and finishing off the many tasks that happened towards the end of the school year, but also behind the scenes working on putting this together so that we can present this comprehensive overview of the year. So I'm going to start out with some of the information. Some of this will sound familiar to the board. I use a lot of the same graphics and pieces of information to start these presentations because it's the consistent process that we've developed around school improvement. So our agenda for this evening really fall into four main areas. The first part is just reviewing our district goals and some of the steps that happen behind the scenes for our continuous school improvement process. That will be myself. Then I'm going to share some COVID demographic data. Then we will get into the year in review. So this is very similar to the format that we used at the midpoint of the year. That presentation was actually at the March board meeting, if you remember, where we gave a kind of mid-year check-in on the goals for the district. So at the end of the year now, we will go through for each of those goals and share some highlights within each goal, as well as some data that goes along with each of those goals. And then at the end, we'll finish off with some next steps in the continuous school improvement process. So a couple of things to keep in mind, and Mike mentioned this already. A lot of these reports have been generated just in the past week, for good reason. To do attendance reports a month ago would not have made sense, right? So a lot of this information was generated just really between last week and some even as late as this morning. There's a lot in here that will be updated. For example, our 328 assessment results. We don't have that information back from the state. When we get that over the summer, we will add that into the building profiles. So these documents will be continually updated. This is the information that we have at this time. The other thing that I think it's important to mention as we start, one of the, I think, best processes that we've used in recent years around school improvement is a simple enough way of looking at all of our data and all of our efforts and thinking about strengths. What are the things that we can be proud about and things that we have done well? And what are those challenges and areas and opportunities for growth? Tonight really is, as we think about the past year, a reflection on the year and focusing on those strengths and the things that we want to highlight. We certainly know there are areas that we want to focus on and identify areas for growth. That is going to be next week. We have a 2-day school improvement workshop where we pull together our BLTs and DLT so that the work can happen across the district utilizing a variety of professionals from within our district. So that will be the focus of next week, 2-day school improvement workshop, to really dig into our data and find where are those areas of challenge and what do we want to put our greatest emphasis and focus on for the coming year. So again, just kind of setting the stage for us tonight. And then last, before I go on to the next slide, I just want to thank the administrators, especially the principals. So a lot happens in the last couple weeks of school. They're working, especially building principals, on closing out the year, graduation, moving update, all these amazing celebrations at the end of the year. And then they have me, hey, how's that reflection document going for the building profile? So we really work as a team to get all this completed, but I just have to thank them because it's been a lot of work in a very condensed time frame to pull all of this together. So what is in your packet? Board members have a maroon folder, and I just want to go through so you have an idea of all the pieces of information that are in there. This is truly an information download to you as a board with lots of information. We will process some of that tonight, but then it will also be the other follow-up presentations that we do over the course of the summer. So what is in your folder? You have a copy of the slides for this evening. You have the School Improvement District Goal Development Calendar that the board adopted at an earlier meeting. I think that was just the last June meeting. So that's the calendar for the year, the major events that happen in the school improvement process. You have 3 building profiles, one for elementary, one for middle school, one for high school. In each profile, there is a wealth of information. These are the documents that I was referencing. As we get more data, we will continually update those building profiles. You have evidence of completion documents. So that is actually one document altogether. It's a spreadsheet. It's very colorful. You'll see reds and greens and yellows and maroons. There is a section for the district improvement plan, and then there's a section for each individual building plan. So those are the plans that we'd established last summer for the school improvement work for the 21-22 school year. So these evidence of completion documents, again, a high-level overview of all the items that we listed in our improvement plans, what those items are, and what we were looking for as evidence of completion. So in there you'll see green. Green means yes, this was accomplished, and or it means yes, we want to continue doing this. Yellow means we may have gotten this started, or yes, this is possibly something that will continue. And red means no, this was something that did not actually happen this year, or no, we did not meet this target, or no, this was not something that we're recommending or thinking about continuing for next year. So it's just a red, yellow, green kind of coding system. And then last but most certainly not least, you have an athletic summary from Ms. Whitcomb that she'll be sharing when we're done with our portion. That's the athletic piece. I also want to mention, as I said, a lot of this has just been put together in the past couple of days. I will be sending to Daphne as district clerk all the links that we are referencing tonight so that she can add it to the board doc so that it will be available for your viewing pleasure, and anybody at home listening or watching can access all these things after tonight. So our district goals, these are the same 3 goals that we've had for a couple of years. And then I always say the easiest way to think about it is we have a curriculum goal, all the things that happen in our classrooms, curriculum instruction, the engagement that happens every day with our students, everything in that area falls under our first goal, which is the curriculum goal. We have goal 2, which is a culture goal, so the culture climate of our buildings, how everybody that is part of our school feels, do they have that sense of belonging that's in our mission statement. That all falls under our culture goal. And then goal number 3 is our community goal. So that really that's about the connection to our parents, our families, and then the larger community, the Greenville community that supports us as a school district. So our curriculum, our culture, and our community are those three overarching goals that we operate under. School Improvement District Goals Development Calendar. This is in your folders. I just wanted to highlight the box that's in red up there. That's where we currently are. So this is a new calendar that starts in June right now, 2022, and goes all the way through the 22-23 school year. We are at that beginning part of the improvement plan process for the 22-23 school year, starting with tonight's board meeting, doing the end of year report, sharing out a lot of our data and information from the 21-22 school year. And then you'll see this at the very end of the presentation where we start talking about what are the next steps. This is a graphic that hopefully looks familiar. I think I use it every time I present to the board and share some data. The reason for that is it's really important when we talk about data and talk about continuous school improvement, we are thinking about all the different categories of data and the importance of multiple measures. We never want to get stuck on any one single data point or one data measure as the end-all be-all. We want to make sure we balance our viewpoint of data across the district. So the three major categories that show up in this graphic are demographic data, so that's our enrollment, it's our discipline data, it's our attendance data, student learning data, that's just what it sounds like. Everything that happens around student learning. So those are our assessment scores, grades of students, graduation rate, anything that falls into that category of student learning. And then the third one is perception. So we are in a nice cycle. This is our 7th year of having a standard perception survey that we send out to all of our students, faculty, staff, and families every spring. So we have now 7 years of historical data around perception as another category of data. So I like this graphic because the sweet spot is in the middle where we're looking at all these different levels of data. In addition, the other kind of bubble on there are the school processes. So I'm going to mention that several times tonight throughout my sharing is the processes that we have around school improvement. We're continually evolving and improving those processes. That's an example of a school process and how we use the different categories of data to continually move us forward. So that's multiple measures of data. All right, so before I get into the first slides of data and then into our goals, I also just want to mention we always leave time at the end for questions, but if the board has questions along the way, by all means, chime in and ask us some questions.
You know us. Thank you.
I'd like to mention. So, our first set of data doesn't necessarily fall into any one goal, but it is demographic data around COVID. This again should look familiar because we really took pretty much what we shared in March at that mid-year, and now this is the full year view finishing out. We had some March data when we shared the mid-year, but really including March, April, May, and June. So these are updated graphs. So this first slide is showing on the left-hand side, quarantined and isolated impacted students and staff. So when we shared this with you at the mid-year point, we were talking about really December and January. That stands out very clearly in that bar graph, the number of students and staff that were isolated or quarantined. While that came down in February and then also came down in March, April, May, and June, the graph on the right shows something a little different. So COVID protocols and the requirements that we were working under changed in March. So there was no longer this level of quarantine, but there was still this level, and Mr. Dubois lived this every single day, was this level of identifying anybody that came up as positive and contacting any student or staff member that had a potential exposure. So I'll use April as an example. On the left-hand side, that's a low number of isolated individuals comparatively, right? But on the right-hand side, you look at that graph, there were still 818 contacted situations where students or staff were notified that you were potentially exposed to somebody with COVID. So why is that important? That still impacted or had an effect on our attendance. Even though there weren't as many quarantined individuals, we still had families that maybe kept students home for a day or two because they had been contacted, or maybe that student ended up having allergies, but we're still going to keep them home for a day or two and test. So that number is still important and relevant when we look at the big picture. And obviously the big takeaway here is that last bullet point that throughout the year, COVID positives, exposures, the different protocols, isolations, all of that created challenges within our school system, and making sure that the educational experience for every student was a solid one. It just continued throughout the entire year even when protocols changed in March.
So if I think about it, let's say in April, we're looking at almost 80, say 70%, because if I factor in staff and stuff like that, that have been impacted. Am I reading it correctly?
In terms of, so the total number, and I'll say, Aaron, if I'm saying this incorrectly, please correct me. So that 818, that could be if there was an individual in a class that one day there was a COVID positive, that student was notified. 3 days later, the same class had a positive in it, so that student maybe was contacted again. So there are repeats in there. That's 818 incidents. I got the thumbs up of notifications, but it could be duplicates. There could be some people that never got contacted because they never had exposure, and somebody else may have maybe had 5, 6 exposures. Does that answer the question? The next graph also speaks to the COVID demographic data. So
I want to go back on that.
Yep.
I appreciate your last bullet and the impact it has. Can you give me any kind of a frame of reference from your perspective or anybody else in the panel about how deep that impact was? Again, using your April numbers, okay, that's, if it translated into a number of kids being contacted 3 or 4 times, is there a way you can tell me of the impact that would have?
You mean on the total number of people versus?
Not numbers,
No.
but the educational experience.
Oh. So I think that's the whole rest of our presentation, Duncan, is keeping,
okay.
kind of, well, no, but keeping
Well, I'm
that
glad I
question in
answered.
mind.
I'm glad you got an answer, thank you.
I think where it shows up the most is in our attendance data.
Okay.
So our attendance data looks challenging, to use the word challenging, if that's a good place to use it, but that's because of the number of quarantines, isolations, kids that were contacted, parents that kept them home. So I think that's the biggest impact there. I think your question, though, is truly the big question of the whole night, and what we're looking at and thinking about, that will be the question of next week, is what truly has been the impact on our students individually, but also globally across the board from the past 2.5 years and everything that they've been through.
Yeah, and the other side of the coin is, and I'd like to recognize and understand the adaptations made by the teaching staff to accommodate a mess like that. That's where I was coming from.
Yeah, I think it's important to note the impact on the entire school district community, right? When we look at all those numbers up there, all the stories that are behind them, of the families and the days off from work and the pulling out of the hair, of trying to figure out if you're sick with this or if you're sick with that, the stress of staying caught up on schoolwork, parents keeping up on top of their kids to stay on top of schoolwork, just the impacts around what COVID, the cultural impact that we've had, our secretaries and the work that they did to stay on top of this and work that they were doing on top of what they normally do, right? The outside of the classroom even, the impacts of COVID are certainly were felt this school year on our, not just the staff, but also our families and our students.
So this other slide with COVID data, the chart on the left, or the bar graph on the left, again, an updated version from what we showed in March, shows the daily average number of faculty absences. This could be from any absence. It could be a teacher that's at a conference, a teacher that is out doing IEP meetings, a teacher that is homesick, a teacher that's isolated. For any reason, it's any absence in our faculty, and it's comparing it to a 4-year average. So key takeaway here, if you look at March, April, May, June and June were identical to the 4-year average. March and April were not drastically different. One distinction to make here is usually during this time frame, we do have, not a huge number, but we do have more PD that happens on a normal, use that in quotes, a normal or typical school year where we have teachers that are doing PD and being pulled from classrooms for PD purposes. We reduced that and limited that significantly this year, throughout the entire year, for the reason that all of our subs, all of our coverage was being focused on all the other reasons for absences. So while it looks like, oh, we're compared to any other year, yes, we managed the total average, but we also made some changes and adjustments to not make that number go higher than what it's been. And then the little chart on the right, I think this kind of speaks to what Matt was just sharing, the amount of above and beyond that happened across the school district. The numbers there represent the number of tutoring hours. So earlier in the year, tutoring was used especially at the elementary school for students that were quarantined and not able to physically come into the building. And then this spring, it was used as after-school tutoring to help students get caught up or to focus on specific skill sets through the RTI process. But the total numbers, 944 for elementary, 364 for middle school, 183 for high school. Those numbers all come from our faculty who already put in their day of work and everything that goes along with teaching students and everything that they were managing already in a challenging school year, and then spending additional hours outside the typical day to make sure that they were supporting our students at all 3 levels. Again, elementary school is significantly higher because of that first part of the year. That was how every student who was isolated or quarantined was receiving instruction, were those after-school tutoring hours.
Todd, do we have a sense of number of students tutored,
I'm looking at that.
or Matt?
I do have information on the number of students tutored for using the stimulus tutoring funds. I could get that information for the board.
I'm curious, like on a percentage basis, so elementary, I don't know, making this number up 10%, you know, whatever it is, just to try to put the tutoring hours in perspective.
Yeah, I think we could get that information.
Yeah. And even for those that were quarantined earlier in the year, yeah, we can get a rough number. It's definitely more than 10%. I would be pretty confident. Yeah, this overbought shake your head because she organized a lot of that tutoring, the tutoring hours. So yeah, it's a decent percentage. All right, so all of that was kind of setting the stage and then providing that COVID data. Hopefully we won't have those slides next year. That's what we can hope for, is we won't have COVID slides to share at the end of next year. But that was really also kind of set the stage. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of those 3 district goals, starting with goal 1, which is everything in the realm of curriculum, and share highlights. Again, many of these things connect to what we shared at the mid-year point, and these are very much the things that we want to highlight as successes and things that were initiated or things that were grown upon this year that had that were positive. So each of the main areas up there, we'll go through and just share some brief context around each one. So I'm going to start with the first one, which is curriculum mapping. So the board has heard for many years now this term curriculum mapping, and there have been different versions. The share out at the end of this year, 21-22, that are highlights, is that we have made progress in this area. So again, I use the expression, on top of everything else that were the demands of a year of COVID, we were able to make progress in our curriculum maps. Some of that comes from using a consistent process. So this was the 3rd full year that we've used the same process of working through what our curriculum maps look like. The exact data, so if you look in your profiles and the building profiles or in the progress chart, there's still some missing data around there. That's because this is something that happens during July. I actually go through and look at every map and rank it as a well-developed, developed, or just kind of getting initiated or started. The initial part of my review when I'm looking at these, we have certainly made gains in the number of maps that are well-developed. And we've also made gains in the number of maps that weren't previously created, that are now created and started. Still have to work through that continuum to get to a place that's well-developed, but we're moving in that direction. It's definitely progress. The other piece that I will add to that, and this is especially true at the elementary school and connects to some of the other bullet points that are up there, specifically instructional coaches, is now that we have our maps well developed in many areas of the elementary school, our coaches are going to the next stage of this, which is scope, sequence, pacing guides, which is truly working with teams and identifying over the course of the month, let's scope out what are the major topics that you're going to teach, what's the sequence that we're teaching them in, and then what's the pacing. Like, we can't allow ourselves to get stuck on a topic for 3 weeks when it's really only intended for 1, because then there's ripple effects throughout the entire year. So these are documents or anchor documents that allow our curriculum maps to come more to life on the daily and weekly planning of teachers. So all really good work around curriculum mapping, curriculum work. The next one is phonics instruction. So this comes from recent years of reviewing our data, and over the summer when we have our school improvement, consistent concerns around our reading and consistent concerns around phonics instruction. So this was not new this year, but this focus on phonics, each year we were adding additional pieces to help with that and get students up to speed in their reading. So this year, a big portion of that was the Really Great Reading program that we implemented for the purpose specifically of our special education students who receive special class reading. But that also, because it was so well received and working very well, our interventionists started utilizing it more as push-in services at the elementary school. And we also now have classroom teachers that have seen it and seen the benefits of it, where students are asking, I want to get trained in that. I want to understand that better so that I can actually do it with my entire class when need be. So that's a really positive piece that over multiple years, piece by piece, a lot of things came together around this area of phonics instruction this year. Yes, Duncan?
Not a negative comment in any way. Does the evangelism, I'll call it, for Really Great Reading, that kind of seems to have swelled up, become somewhat of a viral thing in the school. I hate to use that term, but what point does it become a tipping point? When do we say, this is what we're going to use? Or will we ever say that?
Do you mean use it as a tool for everybody?
Yes.
Good question. So you can use Really Great Reading as a Tier 1, meaning for all students. You can also use it as an intervention for Tier 2, Tier 3, and then special class reading. When we looked at this last summer, the primary focus was around building consistency around what happens with our most struggling students. So it was like, that's where the fire is burning the highest, that's what we want to make sure we address that piece first. Now that we have done that, again, these are conversations that will be happening this summer. The group that came together last summer, which was really a group of special ed teachers, reading teachers, speech pathologists that came together last summer to select Really Great Reading, pulling that group back together this summer to talk about, okay, let's debrief on the year, but now kind of what's the next phase of making sure that we're using this to the best of our ability. Another piece of that is some of our teachers looking at 4th and 5th grade. Because students are coming up to 4th and 5th grade with lacking specific skills, partly because of COVID, partly because of we didn't have all the pieces in place earlier on in K2 that we do now, they want to use some of those as Tier 1. So all those conversations are happening already. A lot of more will happen over the summer in terms of what goes in place in September.
I got that from the original presentation.
Okay.
I guess my point is, do we ever get to the point where we say this is the method we will use in Greenville, absent all others, or eliminating all others?
Okay, now I think I understand your question differently. So Really Great Reading, even if you use it as a Tier 1, is only one piece of reading instruction.
Okay.
So there are multiple pieces, and this is where next point up here is the instructional coaches of truly understanding what's happening in each individual classroom and what we need to focus on. They are looking at all those pieces and making sure what we're doing works for us here at Greenville.
Okay.
So could we get to that point? We could, where it's used as Tier 1 in every classroom.
That's not necessarily a goal.
Correct.
Okay. That's all I'm trying
Not
to
necessarily a goal if that's not what we need.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry if I jumped in.
No, that's okay. So it does connect with the next one, which is instructional coaches. This is another area which I know we shared at the mid-year, and then also back in December, the coaches joined me for a board presentation. Just to share here that you'll be getting even more information about the coaches, the 3 instructional coaches here at Greenville, as well as our 2 embedded specialists from Questar. We worked very closely together this spring to put together as comprehensive as we could a way to gather feedback from the elementary faculty about the coaching model and what we can learn from this first year as we go into the second year with our coaches next year. So we did a 2-part kind of study of doing a survey of our teachers, but then the embedded specialists from Questar actually set up focus groups and cycled through about 15 of our teachers to do more in-depth focus kind of interviews to understand how coaches have had an impact this year, and we're going to put that all together in a report that I will share with the board later this spring. Some key pieces, just as kind of like the highlights, the coming attractions, the themes that we saw from that feedback fell into 4 groups. One was the growth around professional collaboration. So teachers feeling like they were able to grow as professionals when they were working and collaborating with the coaches. Two was curriculum instructional practices. They felt more supported with their curriculum and more supported when it came to, this isn't working in my room, I need something else, or I want to try something else because I see this as a struggle with my students. They had the support of the coaches to help with the curriculum instructional piece. Three was student growth and engagement. So very specific examples around, my students benefited when the coach came into my classroom and was able to model a technique that I could then go and repeat on my own. I saw my students benefit from that because I saw their engagement change when I was able to try something different. And the fourth category was the positive attributes of our coaches. So we had the great benefit of having 3 faculty members that were veteran teachers at Greenville, know the district, know our students, know their faculty, colleagues, were able to step into these roles, and they are well respected by their colleagues, so that has allowed them to grow in that role far more than if they were a new member of our team. And then I pulled out, because we had lots of quotes and lots of great feedback, but I pulled out a couple of quotes from teachers specific to the coaches. So the one was, working with an instructional coach has helped me to become a better teacher and better address all student needs when giving a lesson. And another one was, coaches' expertise, opinions, and knowledge encourage me to do my best and push my thinking even farther. So one of the pieces of instructional coaches is it's that collaborative support for teachers, but it's also that professional growth piece. How do we help teachers continually grow? That very clearly came through in the information, the data that we collected around coaching, that they felt supported and they felt they had been pushed to be an even better teacher, which is fantastic.
If I could add a little to the value of the coaches and something we've seen this year. Starting in November, at every RTI meeting, we had at least one of the literacy coaches and the math coach at every meeting. And to speak to the professional collaboration and growth that happens when you're at an RTI meeting, this is a meeting of the minds. This is a problem-solving team, and you want your best professionals there at the table with you. And the relationships they had with the teachers, and the willingness of the teachers when the coaches would say, you know what, I'll come in tomorrow during writing time and we'll take a look at how this student's struggling, and I'll be able to give you some tips on that. And the teacher's willingness to say, yeah, come on in. I think it speaks to the quality of the coaches, the folks that we have doing that. It speaks to the professionalism of our teachers, and then also just overall the value of having them not just to come in and model a lesson, but at the table as problem solvers.
So that collaboration piece. The fourth bullet up there is the Rural Schools Project. So this was the 3rd year that we were part of a Rural Schools Project that is partnered with the Center for Educational Policy Research through Harvard University. The key takeaway here was we did intervention is what they called. It's really trying something new, trying something a little different, called student success planning. The benefit of the Rural Schools Project is that it is a research project where the data that we collect as a school is actually put together with other rural schools from New York State and Ohio, so that there is enough data to create a valid study to determine if something is impacting at a level that's worthy of continuing or scaling up. So just the key takeaway here, student success planning that we did with 9th graders this year. There were lots of challenges with that. Again, the challenges of a COVID year and trying something new. But we were able to do a version of it, and basically it was meeting with 9th graders to get them thinking about what are their strengths, what are their goals, what do they hope to do after high school, what are those options. So somewhat of what our counselors do all the time anyway, this was a little bit more intensive, specifically with our 9th graders. The data showed that there was a slight promise. From a research perspective, there was slight promise in this being an effective strategy. So they are planning, they being the Rural Schools Project, are kind of reconfiguring it and putting out a version 2.0 that could be tried next year, and additional data collected. We plan to be part of that. And then the second part of it is each year that we are part of this project, we are rolling out an intervention. So student success planning with 9th graders was the intervention for this year. The different one for next year is post-grad checklists. Basically what that is taking the different pathways for after graduation and having seniors work through, if your path is you're going to college, what's your checklist? What are the things that you need to accomplish in the timeline so that you are on the path to success for college. If you're going right into the workforce, what are the things that you need? If you're going into the military, what are the things you need? This very much partners up and aligns with what we already have as senior seminar. This just helps us evolve and perfect what we do even more. So that's what we will be focusing on, and some of that work has started for what those checklists will be for the 22-23 school year. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Gorgon to talk about CTE pathways.
Okay, so as you know, earlier this year, the board had approved the ag pathway. So we're looking forward to continue with that next year. We're going through the same process with technology as well too, to hopefully get a technology pathway. Hopefully more information about that will be coming your way by the end of the summer or early fall. So just a little bit of update where we are with our CTE pathways.
We also wanted to highlight not just our use of data, which we just know is a best practice as educators, but the efficiency of using data. We generate so much educational data on our students. We generate it through screeners, and we generate it down to every single day, every single moment that we're working with our students. Everything that they produce for us becomes information to show us how they're progressing. And earlier on in the year, we talked about a tool that the district had brought in a year or two ago called Intervention Compass, and one of our goals this year was to get that in business and up and running. We have been using that for the latter 2/3 of the year to refine the use of data for building our intervention groups. We've been using it in the intervention process, not just to pull the data, but also to refine our communication and our record keeping for RTI, but also goal setting. We used it to reduce the amount of time that the intervention teams were using to look at data, right? Because we know that's a great use of time. However, an even better use of time is working with the students, right? So if we can become more efficient at looking at our data and our data systems and how we use it, then we have more time with our students. Just a quote that came from a teacher about a week and a half ago. She emailed me, and this is what she wrote me. It took us 2 hours to make the AIS grouping lists for next year. It used to take us 3 to 4 days just to compile all the data for review. Well, thank goodness for Intervention Compass. It's my commercial.
Matt, a quick question on that. For the Intervention Compass, does that allow us to slice the data, so by low income, special ed, or the different subgroups that we need from SCD's perspective?
Yeah, we can really quickly filter down to groups, subgroups, any group that we want. Students who were in pre-K, students who weren't in pre-K, students who have received intervention for reading, students who have received intervention for math, IEP, low socioeconomic status, you name it. We can make any group on there that we want and filter for it.
Thank you.
The last one under Goal 1 for curriculum highlights is professional learning. So some of this, what I already mentioned in some of the other shares, it's certainly our instructional coaches and the work that they have done pre-K through 6. One specific thing that they did is called 6 shifts, and this also will speak to Goal 2 under collaboration. But the coaches wanted to make sure that we were using our faculty meeting time as effectively as possible. So they came up with themes that they wanted to work on throughout the year. One of those themes was around literacy and phonics and reading instruction. So there's a book called 6 Shifts, meaning what are the 6 shifts that need to happen in literacy instruction based on the research. And it's a friendly way of thinking about it, because it's basically saying, here's some things that have always been done, here's the shift that you need to make. It's not throw everything out and start from scratch, it's we can all shift, we can all evolve. So they did that over multiple faculty meetings throughout the year, so that there was this nice theme and continual conversation around this topic. And we certainly will continue that type of planning and strategy next year. And then really great reading was a lot of the professional development that happened for elementary teachers. More of that happening over the summer, more will continue throughout the year next year. completely different example, but I wanted to pull out one from the secondary level. So we had a project-based learning kind of cohort of teachers that started last summer with Sarah Feist from Tech Valley High School. So she works for Tech Valley High School, but she's also a professional development specialist that does training on PBL, or project-based learning. So she worked with a cohort of teachers starting last summer. They had a day to kind of like kick it off and think about how can they take certain things in their curriculum and make them more project-based. And then had 3 or maybe it was actually 4 times throughout the year where they came back together as a group. Earlier in the year continued to plan, and then later in the year it was, I implemented this project in my room, this is what I was able to accomplish, let's debrief as a group, how can we make this better? So again, a little snippet that I got from a teacher last week was, well, I'll paraphrase, basically saying being able to work together, so it was a math and science teacher at the high school that collaborated together to do a joint project, made their curriculum come alive, and it certainly made it more relevant for their students because it was project-based, so it was just more relevant for their students. And having done it with one big project, that project will continue next year with adaptations and shifts to make it even better. But now that they've done it once, they're like, now we feel more comfortable. We can actually do this again for another unit or another project next year to just add more opportunities for project-based learning. So that was a very positive structure that we tried this year, where it was a summer day and then follow up throughout the year. And again, we're going to repeat that this summer. We'll meet in August and hopefully have a nice group of teachers that will do the same next year around project-based learning. So a lot of information. This is the heaviest one because curriculum is in the 3 district goals. While they're all important, this is the one where we have the most work happening. The bullets up on the screen are not inclusive of everything that's happened throughout the year, but again, us as an admin team pulling out the items that we wanted to make sure we highlighted, gave updates, because we shared a lot of these things in the March. So those are the bullet points, but now we're going to get into some of our data. All of this data is, again, around Goal 1, which is our curriculum and instruction. So Mr. Berkshire, take it away.
All right. So you had seen this image before in March, the triangles. And what we're looking at here is our iReady data from the end of the school year. So we use iReady as a screening tool for our intervention program. It's the first part of a learning process for us as educators. It provides data that tells us where a student is at a moment in time relating to their grade level and to national norms. In addition, it allows us to monitor student growth throughout a school year and longitudinally over longer periods of time. And we give this 3 times a year in math and in reading. So when that data comes in, we look at it from a number of different views, from very high up down to a granular data at the student level. But tonight we're going to be looking at it as the 10,000-foot view, if you will, from the window of your airplane. It's a flyover. At this level, we're looking to see how our students are moving in comparison to where they started and where we hoped for them to be at the end of the year. And one report that we look at when examining data at this level is the 3-level placement report. And this report breaks down our students into 3 levels. So on or above grade level, 1 grade level below, or 2 or more grade levels below. And they represent the data visually for us in a triangle. And we have 2 triangles here, and those 2 triangles represent all Greenville students from grades 2 to 8. On the left is the breakdown of students currently in June of 22. On the right is the breakdown of students at the beginning of the school year in September of 2021. The takeaway that we can see is that there was substantial movement in the percentage of students who are 2 or more grade levels below in the positive direction, right? A decrease in the number of those students. And we also had marked movement in the number of students who are on or above grade level. So to look at the students at risk for tier 3, right, our students who are 2 or more grade levels below, we had a decrease from 40% of students in grades 2 through 8 down to 26. And then going to the base of the triangle, we had an increase in the percentage of students who were at or above grade level from 28% up to 46%. And down below on the bar graphs, that's a breakdown of middle school and elementary school, and just a movement on the 3-tier scale from the first window, which would have been back in September, to the most recent window, which was just really days ago. So a big takeaway from looking at that page is that our iReady data for reading is showing positive growth in the number of students who are reading at grade level or above, and a decrease in the number of students who are 2 or more grade levels below standard. There's all kinds of different ways to look at data, and we try to drill further down into our iReady data, and we're always trying to learn more about interpretations of this. And we just had a meeting with our iReady representative last week to help us break down our data and to provide some context, right? A place for it to sit and a place to give some comparison to. And we did some talk around this model, which is the 5-level placement. And it's a more detailed look, and it breaks them down even further than the 3-level placement. So you have an on grade level or above, and then there's this early on grade level. So those that mid on grade or above and the early on grade are combined in the 3-level system. Here you see them broken up. And then we also look at 1 grade below, 2 grades below, and then 3 or more grade levels below. This graph here is a new approach, and it was in response to a request from the board at the last, the mid-year check-in, in trying to ground our data and looking at how we compare to New York State and how we compare to national norms. So with this 5-level breakdown, this is a comparison of Greenville with New York State and national data from this school year. And the bar graph all the way on the left is a graph representing historical national norms from the 2018-2019 school year, which is the last full year before COVID. So this shift in the distribution from 2018-2019 to the current is noticeable from New York to national to Greenville, that COVID has had an impact on the learning of students all across this country, all across this state, and all across our community. So looking closely at this in reading, we see Greenville slightly below national rates for this year for students mid on grade level or above, and in alignment with students who are 2, 3, or more grade levels below. In comparison with New York State, we're equal with the percentage of students mid on grade or above, and we have a smaller percentage of our students who are 2, 3, or more grade levels below. Okay. Then we'll flip over to math. We're going to look at the math data in the same way, where we look at the breakdown of these triangles in the movement from September through June. Again, this is the 3-tier system, and we've seen a decrease. If we look at that triangle on the right and the triangle on the left, that top triangle, that red, sharp decrease in size. We went from 31% of students being at risk for Tier 3 down to 14 at the end of the year. And at the beginning of the year, 18% of students were at or above grade level, and moved up to 53%. So this data shows that students in 2 to 8 are closing the gap in math, and we always like to see a decreased number of students in Tier 3 across the grades.
And just really quickly with that too, one of the things that we touched upon last summer when we were looking at a lot of this data is how do we get students talking about it more, teachers talking about it more, and parents. This year we really pushed out letters ahead of each of the testing dates, really describing why we're doing iReady and what is the purpose for it. Teachers had meetings with students talking about setting goals. A lot of students, immediately after iReady was over, were asking some of their teachers, did I show growth? So you have students talking language now, and you can get instant results pretty within, as soon as the student's done. So the fact that students are excited about seeing that they made growth, and kudos to our teachers for, having a lot of those one-on-one conversations is really great. And then we have been sending those iReady results home also to parents this year too, just for that awareness that this is another tool we're looking at in terms of trying to really look at data for students, these 3 times a year along with just our everyday data in the classroom too.
So if I look at this, then comparing the ELA to the math, we seem to be stronger actually in math. And the reason I'm saying that is I always like to compare it to historical, because at some point we have to go back or recover the learning loss. So this is really helpful, and thank you for providing the historical. So in math, we have 6 percentage points difference between where we are currently. I'm only looking at the green. So I'm saying students on grade level, we're at 53%. Historically, we're at 59%. So I'm looking at 6 percentage points. But if I look at reading, we're at 45 right now that are green, compared historically on a national basis of 57. So we still have a little more room to go, kind of keep pushing on the reading for that. So, so what is my conclusion? Keep up the good work. It's nice to see that we're getting there.
I think too, I know Todd was speaking earlier about the really great reading program. The comments we're hearing from teachers this year, the growth they're seeing with students in the program this year. I think hopefully we will see that benefit next year, again, continuing with our iReady results also. So, I mean, again, I know at the elementary they've heard a lot, but just talking to the reading teacher in the middle school, the growth she's seeing with students has just been great. So, it's exciting.
Oh, Matt, before you go on, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Looking at the tutoring hours that we offered, and then looking at the results from iReady, I'm wondering about the methodology of offering tutoring hours. Was that offered to whoever wanted it, or was there any effort of looking at this data and saying to a particular student, maybe we ought to tutor you a little bit or give you some help?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thanks for asking, so we can bring it out to the front. Yeah, there's definitely a process, and when we talk about all the data and all the information that we have, for the stimulus tutoring, not the COVID tutoring, obviously that being you've been put in this position where you can't come to school, we're going to tutor you. But with the stimulus tutoring, it was based on day-to-day classroom data, the teachers knowing where they stood on their screeners and what percentile they were at, and how far they were behind their peers or national norms, and highlighting those as students of need. In the middle school, that the tutoring was based on how they did on the iReady, how they were doing in their current class, if they were failing a course. We had middle school teachers in the grades 6, 7, and 8 RTI meetings that we would have say, put together a group. I want these 4 kids. Can we add them to my group? And at the high school, same process where we would go through, at the high school we're not doing iReady screening, but we would look at current grades, students missing assignments, hey, here's Duncan, he's got 4 zeros over the last 4 weeks. Is there somebody who'd be willing to take him after school, help him get caught up? So we really did use a process and that information that the students were generating with their student work and with these tests and screeners to help identify students who would benefit from tutoring.
To follow that up, I know in high school we have after-school help with teachers, and I know students being receptive to help and students not being receptive to help. I hope there's some methodology used to encourage them to show up. But if it's not, then I think that we should work some method to have those students help us with these results.
We certainly had, especially at the high school level, some students that were like, "No, I got it. I'm gonna get caught up." And I think one of the, some of the ways that we got around that was a lot of those teachers who offered to tutor those students were teachers who had really solid relationships with those kids, who could be like, "Okay, but the second I see you don't have it, you're gonna come and stay after with me, right?" And they have that relationship. Also, a lot of parents, the guidance counselors or the teachers would call home and say, "Hey, Duncan again, four zeros over the last 2 weeks. If we could get him to stay after next week, 2 days, we could probably get those zeros taken care of." And the cooperation with the parents to say, "He'll be there, right? I'll make sure I pick him up after school, or we'll make sure that he can ride the late bus."
Yeah, the late buses were definitely beneficial for some students. And we had some students who consistently stayed after each week that consistently rode late buses. So that definitely helped some families a lot.
I wonder how you got access to my records. My brother's assured me that you see it.
Yeah.
Found your file back in the vault. Blew the dust off the top.
Probably had to move more than dust.
Is there a stone tablet?
Hieroglyphics. I wanted to ask Todd, have you done any kind of review of senior seminar and the impact it's had? I remember it was about 3 years ago, maybe as long as 5, who knows, time flies when you're having fun. But when you first brought that to the board and said you wanted to do it, you gave us a whole bunch of reasons why. Can you give us a little update on that?
So I think it's the 7th year. I think this is the 7th year that we've had it. It's definitely 6, because this is my 5th year in this role, and I had at least 1 year as principal, but I think 2. So I think this is the 7th year. So Lynn Hughes is the teacher of that course. She certainly does a level of checking in with the kids every year of what worked for you, what did you like, what can I do better, what can I continue to involved with. In terms of the impact after graduation, I wish I had some hard hey, we can point to that. It's more the anecdote, and actually I just shared one in our policy meeting earlier, of and Lynn shares good stories. So you ask her sometimes, she can tell you the exact story, but literally a kid will knock on our window. "Hey, Miss Hughes, you know that portfolio you made me do? I need that for a job. Can you print that off for me? Because I didn't save it last year after I graduated." So, and she has a lot of those stories of kids that just come back and say, either 1, "Thank you, I really did use all that stuff," or 2, "I didn't believe you when you told me I was going to need it, but now I really do need it. Can you help me out?" So it's a lot of anecdotal, that type of information. That's not a report necessarily, but that's what Lynn experiences on a regular basis.
So do you have an outline of what the rural schools program is going to do in that area and how it fits with what we're doing already?
Good question. We have some initial information, just the idea behind what they're putting together. What they're compiling, which will be nice for us, because we've done all this in-house, right? I mean, we certainly reach out, but we're one of the few schools, certainly in this region or even across the state, that have that specific course as a graduation requirement with the components that are part of it. So we've done a lot of we built it on our own. The fact that they are kind of going through research of what shows to be best practice to put together, hey, if you're a college-bound student, here's what shows to be successful for your checklist. It's a simple enough thing, right? It's a checklist. That's literally what it will be. It will be a page-long checklist of things to do with the timeline, but to have that we can actually then just take and use will be an enhancement of what we have already done.
Okay, thank you.
Todd, to that point, will it start in the 9th grade, or will it only be for seniors?
Good question. This one is just for seniors. The checklists are meant for seniors. Now that you're a senior, and for the most part by senior year, they have an idea of what their path is for post-graduation. Here's the immediate things for you to do as a senior. It's kind of a bookend to the student success planning, which is what we worked on this year for 9th graders, which is more open-ended, more explore all your possible options, think of all the things that you could maybe do, whereas the senior checklists are more, okay, you've committed to this is what your pathway is, here's what you should make sure that you're accomplishing.
Because I guess what I was wondering is, specifically for the students that are on the college bound, then it really is earlier that you need to start
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
oh, it could be expanded, fabulous.
And that's where, because we actually, Duncan and I also lose track of time, but originally senior seminar was just during senior year. Several years ago, we shifted so that it's actually students start at the spring of their junior year and finish at the fall of their senior year, exactly for that reason, that we wanted kids coming into senior year with certain things completed already. So we kind of made that adjustment, and we can certainly look at the checklist when we have them. Are some of those things happening in junior seminar during the junior year? My guess is going to be probably, but again, it will enhance what we've already done. All right, I'm going to refocus us back to Matt in the last iRead slide.
And we're back. So again, this is the 5-level breakdown of that math data that we were just looking at in the 3-level breakdown. And we see, again, the norms, historical 1819 all the way over on the left, and then we're comparing national, New York, and Greenville. We see Greenville below national and slightly below state rates for students at or above grade level. However, we see something on here that's encouraging and an area of focus for us. A significant number of students who are in the early on grade level category. This appears to be an area where we can focus our attention in the coming school year. Another, I think, positive takeaway from this graph is the percentage of Greenville students who are placed 2, 3, or more years below grade levels. So in Greenville, we are below the state 11 points and 7 percentage points below the national average on the good side. In fact, we're almost in alignment with the percentage of students nationwide from the 2018-2019 school year when we look down at the students who are far below, like our students who are in that most intensive intervention category. So that context helps to paint a picture there and ground where we currently stand.
Another piece of elementary data, this one is also math, following up to the iReady, but looking specifically at fact fluency. This is Reflex is the program that we utilize for this in grades 2 through 5. This is another area that we shared a mid-year, so this is the end of year. Certainly we hope, or we look for, getting to 100%, meaning all 100% of our students have mastered their fact fluency. If you look at the majority of the bar graphs there, it's 80 or higher, or right around 80%, meaning 80% of the students have mastered their fact fluency. That's a good rate. That other percentage, about 20%, those are our students that are in RTI. It's another piece of data or information for those students as a specific area. For example, 2nd grade, this is addition, subtraction, facts, 0 to 10. So we know that those students that have not mastered it, that's an area that they need to continue to work on in 3rd grade so that they can build those fact fluency skills. Important note, the one that's in the middle, grade 3, it looks like it's way lower, but that's for good reason. So in 3rd grade, they start the year with continuing to practice those 0 to 10 addition and subtraction, but at about the halfway point, probably past the halfway point, they shift to a multiplication and division, 0 to 10. So by the end of the year, about half of the students were proficient with that fluency skill. They will continue to work on that next year in 4th grade. But key takeaway here are those 80% roughly, or a little bit higher, for the majority of those fact fluency in grades 2, 3, 4, 5. And those are all higher than last year's fluency rates, which is also a positive. And one last data piece for elementary is ESGI. Back to you.
This is just a sampling of results. We give a number of these smaller sub-tests for ESGI. These are teacher-made tests, and they're used at the screening level for us to make decisions on intervention for our youngest students, kindergarten and 1st grade, where we don't give the iReady computerized independent tests to those little guys. So when the ESGI test is given, there's a teacher sitting right next to them while the students are working on, identifying numbers. Can they do that? Yes or no? Can they identify 7? Can they identify 13? Can they identify 25? Yes or no? Yes or no? Oral counting. For the end of the year target here, the oral counting target for kindergarten is be able to count 1 through 100. So across the kindergarten, 73% of our students were able to count 1 to 100, or 73% of the answers that were given were correct. So 80% of the students there would be the target if we were to have a proper intervention triangle. So there's a little bit of work to do, and we'll have to identify these students in the fall and make sure that we pick right up where they left off and we get them ready to pick up with the first grade math skills. Moving over to the right, we have some of the reading ESGI screener information, the uppercase and lowercase letter ID. That's something we like to be mastered by mid-year, and so here we sit at the end of the school year. Nearly everybody, all those answers are correct. So the 3% incorrect could be, little mistakes here and there that a student makes. And last there is the lowercase letter sounds, and that's really a being ready to learn and ready to decode skill. And so 86% of the responses on those subtests were correct.
Let's go into our next slide here. This is very eye-opening. I think at mid-year we reported out just a little bit about the comparison from 2020 to 2021 when we were hybrid to 21, 22. And you can see each quarter, the importance of in-person learning, of just the decrease in numbers of course failures each quarter all throughout this past year. And just, and that's really kudos again to a lot of our teachers really staying on top of students, having their daily team meetings to talk about students, bringing certain names to RTI process to see if they need more tier 2, tier 3 interventions, or if a student might need some after-school tutoring that we provided, or just encouragement to be staying after school for some of our after-school help sessions. As a result of that, this past year, numbers were definitely down. Remember, course failures can also, include, we talk a lot about math and ELA here in this type of presentation, but, for example, in 8th grade, students take, a 10-week course each quarter for ag, fags, health, home careers. So some of those 88 in terms of course failures could be something, just even a 10-week course in there too. So again, really just eye-opening the difference there from one year to the next there of just the hybrid to in-person. So.
Okay, so the high school is the next slide. Looks very similar to what we shared in March. There's been a huge reduction in the number of course failures from last year to this year. Again, just to echo what Mr. Reeve just said, and I think I speculated back in March that having students back in person on a daily basis is really vital and has helped with the decrease in the number of course failures. As Matt Berkshire mentioned earlier, we have provided 183 tutoring hours of tutoring to our high school students, and I know at the middle school level, Matt mentioned that they did more of like a grouping. Most of our high school tutoring was one-on-one, and I think a lot of that did have to do with students feeling comfortable and not really showing their areas of weakness or even to other students. So it was easier just to match teachers with students one-on-one, and a lot of it was based on the relationships that they have with their teachers as well. So just to point out too, and I know everyone has heard this, but the 183 hours were in addition to what teachers do throughout the school day. So teachers do, give up their lunches to spend time with students, or go find students in one of their study halls and pull them. So there are a lot of things that happen throughout the school day, but this was something that teachers did in addition to the school day. And just to kind of point out what Brian had said, there was 77 students for that 132 course failures at the end of the year, so it's roughly like two course failures per student there. I was really excited about this, seeing where we ended last year, so I'm hoping that we continue to do the good work next year as well.
All right, we're going to shift to goal 2. So as we shift from goal 1 to goal 2, just another note that I mentioned in the beginning, what we chose for goal 1 was to share some of those highlights and successes from the year. In terms of the actual data and the building profiles that the board has, there is much more detail and more data reports that are in there in each individual building profile, so you can look at those. If you have other questions, you can certainly ask after this evening. What we selected was just the overall highlights. So shifting to goal 2, which is our culture goal, I'm going to kick us off with enhanced collaboration. Again, this is echoing what I said in March. We really made an effort this year to make sure that we were including teachers in the planning for our faculty meetings and also our conference days. So what does that look like? For each conference day we had this year, team leaders, department chairs were provided opportunities for within your department, within your team, what are the areas that you need to focus on? and incorporating that into those days, but also balancing that with the things that we had identified as a district. So curriculum mapping, we made sure that we had specific number of faculty meetings throughout the year designated specifically for that, which is what allowed us to make progress in that area despite a very challenging and busy year with everything else going on. And another example of the collaboration piece, I keep referencing the coaches. Certainly the work that they have done at the elementary school and into 6th grade is in each individual building, but they've also started to make the bridge stronger between 5th grade and 6th grade. So all of that comes back to how do we continually improve our collaboration efforts and work together as professionals. Turn it over to Brooke.
Right, excellent. So this year, our PPS staff members, and just to give you a reminder who's in PPS, those are our school psychologists, our counselors, and our nurses. So they've worked hard to provide SEL, or social emotional learning support, K-12, not only with individual counseling of students, but also working with groups of students. And classroom lessons. So I kind of want to highlight, I want to pick up from where we left off in our last presentation, where I just kind of gave you an overview of what they were working on as a whole. So I've kind of broken it out to some of the highlights and lessons that were taught at the elementary, middle, and high school. So at the elementary level, the counselors in the K-2 classrooms were providing lessons and activities that were based on self-management, relationship skills, self-awareness, and responsible decision-making. And there was a number of activities in different arts and crafts and things that went along with that. And in grades 3-5, lessons and activities were based on social awareness, the importance of empathy, relationship skills, and self-control. So in addition to those lessons, they're continuing to collaborate with the Character Ed, and I know that's on the next bullet, but to continue the work of the Anti-Discrimination League, No Place for Hate. So those were kind of the key highlights for the elementary as far as the lessons. There's well more, they're doing a lot more with the social emotional learning for individual students that were struggling with key areas, but these were the key things that were part of the classroom instruction. And we're going to continue to build on that as we move along to next year. So at the middle school, specifically starting in 6th grade, the mindfulness lessons and curriculum was taught, providing students with strategies and tools to be able to manage stress, as well as lessons on respect and learning how to disagree appropriately. The PBIS team, in conjunction with some of the PPS folks, are working together to develop that positive learning environment that goes along with Brian's PBIS system school-wide, as well as continuing that work with the Anti-Discrimination League and No Place for Hate, along with the Character Ed. And moving on to the high school level, this year our high school psychologist, Sam Grove, was pushing into the health classes and providing lessons on suicide prevention, how to recognize signs of it, and other mental health concerns. Also chairing the Mental Health Advocates Club. She worked with a group of students and the media club this year to promote healthy supports for mental health. Students, one of the activities, there was many different things she did, but one of the activities in conjunction with the media club was students were able to come to the library and create a journal that's going to help them manage their emotions and behaviors. And then during the morning video announcements, there would be a specific journal prompt reviewed, and then the kids could respond in their journal as they saw fit. Also, at the high school level was the Mental Health Matters Day, and that included activities and instruction on recognizing individual differences, social skills, communication, preventing and managing conflict, ethical safety, and societal factors in making good decisions. So those were all some of the highlights that were going on in each of the buildings. In addition to the instruction, I had mentioned at the our last presentation that we had purchased, that the PPS team met, they reviewed a number of different software programs. We have purchased the Aperture software. That software is going to house our social emotional surveys that we are going to start administering in October. So we're going to have some training over the summer that's going to help our PPS team to meet and decide how we're going to implement the surveys. And within this software, it also provides resources on lesson planning for teachers in the classroom, as well as, for the PPS members to use their resources in individual counseling and in group counseling sessions, along with resources for parents. So it's really an all-encompassing software that we're going to dive into, and then it's going to be able to give us some data. So we'll be able to use some benchmark data, and then hopefully next year we'll be able to report out to kind of definitely see what are the key areas that students are needing, and how can we as a PPS team really target some of those social emotional pieces. The last thing that I have is to talk about our school social worker, who has been a wonderful addition to our school. She has been providing support to a few of the families of greatest need. She had created a family needs assessment, and then she's also gone out to homes and provided those families with resources, mental health resources for either, if they're in Albany County, connecting them with agencies in Albany County, if they're in Greene, and it's doing the same thing in Greene County. So, we've been working hard, and we're going to continue that work for next year, and I hope to be able to share some of our great highlights next year. And thank you.
I have a question.
Yep.
Your Mental Health Matters Day, what day was that? In the spring and the fall?
Yeah, I will tell you. Let's see.
And could you describe it a little bit? Was it
Yeah.
an announcement that said today's Mental Health Day?
Well, it's organized it's hosted by the Mental Health Association from New York State. And it was, she didn't say when it was given, because they've been doing a bunch of different mental health activities, and I guess it was building. So as I'm looking from the information that she had provided, they were working on 3 goals through the Mental Health Advocates group, and that's a group of students that meet and then present that information out to the high school students. So I believe it was in the springtime when they held the event. Do you remember exactly? I can get you the exact date.
So I'm getting the idea that it wasn't a building-wide kind of shut down everything else kind of deal where...
No, it was done in conjunction with the club, and disseminating that information out during the time in the cafeteria, or setting up times that if students had a study hall, they could come to the library, participate in the different activities. So there's a variety of different activities, and I didn't go through them all, but the journal making was one. Then there's a self-love event, demonstrating creating goals for achieving personal and academics. So there's...
They presented to the high school staff as well, too.
Right, right. So it's really, it used to be our Yellow Ribbon Club. I don't know if you remember hearing that, and that was just targeted for supporting students, learning about suicide and preventing suicide. But when Sam Grove had come here, she wanted to expand it, and she met with a group of students, and they came up with the name with the Mental Health Advocates. So it's not only looking at the suicide prevention piece, but it's also providing support for the high school students, so that they could recognize if a fellow peer is struggling, and give them strategies on how to help them, and try to, instead of doing group presentations, she found it's more effective to have them come to the library in small groups, create a journal, go to the cafeteria. So it's been great. Yes?
If I'm remembering correctly, and
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but we contract with the Greene County for the social worker, correct? Or they're on staff?
Nope, they're on our staff.
They're on our staff now?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. That's what I was gonna suggest if we had to,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, if you remember, Duncan, we tried that.
Yeah, I
and
thought
it
we did, and
didn't.
I couldn't remember if we had done it.
Yeah, so we.
Because it seems to me that, you know, for continuity, we would want to go that way, and my point was going to be that we ought to look into that
Yeah,
to make sure.
and moving forward into next year, I just met with her last week, and she's looking to join some other PPS members and really get into the classroom, and support teachers on some of the lessons, and almost, I'll use the word coach, because that's what it would be, to go into the classrooms and support the teachers in carrying out specific lessons.
Brooke, I just have a question.
Yeah.
Have we taken referrals and perhaps overlaid where the different initiatives are happening to see if we see any type of impact or hopefully a decline then in referrals?
Yep, well, not so much layering up referrals, but let me explain to you the process, especially with looking at, there's varying layers here. So then for counseling, right? So you have and I'll go from the top down. So special ed, we have a CSE meeting. It's based on cognitive data and emotional data from grading scales such as a BASC, right? That's a behavior inventory. So there's that data, which then drives that specific counseling need. And then there's the RTI process, which during Matt's meetings, they'll bring up certain behavioral concerns or social emotional concerns, and therefore there is a plan that gets devised through RTI that then gets disseminated out to, is it a school counselor support? Is it a social work support? So when we have figured out that, we've arranged it that because we have our psychologists and our school counselors, they're providing one level of support. Our social worker now is our highest level of support. So for example, this year, there were 6 referrals that were given to our social worker, Carolyn. Those were families that were in significant need. And so therefore, the kids not only needed support within the school environment, but they also needed support outside of school in the home. So we've kind of layered it that way. Did I answer your question?
I guess when I was saying referrals, I was thinking fighting in the hall.
Sorry. Like behavioral referrals. No, we haven't. Well, I'll let you.
I was gonna say, I'll speak to that because
Yes,
a lot of things were happening at the high school. I believe it was maybe like March, maybe late March, even, I think there was none in April. So I think it all got out of their system. I'm so hoping for Tracy, because there was a lot in the beginning of the year and then around the holiday season, around that time. I mean, a lot of it is them coming back together. They haven't seen each other for, so many months, I should say, and then the school being the hub of the community and really everyone coming back here, and then just not understanding how to get along, which are some of the social issues. I think a lot of it has to do with the phones. The idea that kids have been on their phones for the past, year and a half, 18 months and not been able to put it down. I think that caused a lot of the trouble. The school counselors did a lot of work with diffusing situations just with regards to stay off social media. This is what happens every time something goes on social media. So we did have a number of fights at the high school this year, but I don't want to say too much. I don't want to jinx myself, but we've been doing really well, the spring. And you would think because spring fever and with weather getting nicer, we really ended the school year very nicely with regards to nothing physical occurring.
I also want to add that I don't want to say fortunate, because it's not just good fortune. It comes from the quality of the community and the work of the teachers and everybody here. But we're not so overwhelmed with behavior referrals that we have to look at the data at that 10,000 foot level like with the RTI. When we have a student who has a fight, we know who that student is. At the elementary school level, if we have a student who, and this is a new practice this year that Peter and I were working on, if there's a student who gets 3 referrals, they go to an RTI meeting or they're brought up at our elementary PPS meeting where we develop a plan for that student. So we don't find ourselves sifting through pages and pages of behavior referrals to find these, to look at, okay, we have, 75 fights. And I've worked places where we have that number, and you are looking at it as from a very high level, right? We're able at the, in Greenville to say, this is a student in crisis. We need to come up and have some wraparound for that student. So the PPS department, intervention teams, teachers, all those folks, parents work together when we have students who reach that level of concern, definitely.
Well, and two, with the Aperture software and the survey, those surveys would be able to be taken during the class. So, when you think about mental health and you're not like a student's not walking around saying, I mean, some do, but others are not saying, so I have all this anxiety inside, or this is not working for me, right? They're not necessarily expressing that. But with a survey, they'd be able to take it, at a specific time, answer the questions, and then the data in the program is going to be able to filter out if there's a need and rate it for us, so that then we can, if a student gets red flagged, well, then a counselor can be on it right away. If there's a student that maybe needs, some strategies or coping skills, and that's based on a classroom level, then we can go in and teach a lesson. We can support that teacher. So, moving forward with this type of assessment is going to help generate some good data and hopefully reduce some of those behaviors. It depends on the level. So.
And just, kind of on an informal note, I mean, our students here are really good about coming to adults and letting us know if they feel a friend is in crisis. They come, our school counselors, they come to the office, they'll tell a parent might email us. So, our students are really good about that, of just coming and saying, you might want to check in on so-and-so. I'm seeing some things or something on social media that's just getting me worried about them. So I just think our students are doing a good job of that also too.
So I was going to speak about the character ed K through 5 assemblies, and I think Brooke spoke to a lot of those things. So just a couple of pieces to highlight. As the year evolved, I know at the beginning of the year, a number of you saw the assemblies that we were putting together that were virtual because we didn't want to put hundreds of kids in the gym together for an assembly. And those were fun, but as the year went on, we got more input from teachers that were on our character ed PLC committee. And the assemblies, the virtual assemblies kind of evolved into things where, at the beginning of the year, it was Peter and I and a guidance counselor. And by the end of the year, it was teachers and students acting out skits. So students writing and having input, and the kids really responded positively to that. And that was a lot of fun. And just a lot of collaboration around getting that done. And I think it shows the value that our educators hold for character education. And not just to highlight the K to 5, but I also want to highlight the work at the middle school. Middle school was named No Place for Hate School for the second year in a row. There's work going on to integrate the work with No Place for Hate with the work that the PBIS team does, the excellent work that the PBIS team does. And to close it off, Ellis was named a Gold Star No Place for Hate School for the second year in a row. So that sets it up for Brian.
So again, just if you recall in March there, I talked a little bit about diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI, and how that was a BLT goal from last year. A lot of that started from a survey that is a BLT we did together in June of 2021 for our SEP plan. that really allowed us then focus in on some areas that we felt we needed to focus on this past school year. As a faculty, we really felt that we needed to have a stronger understanding of DEI ourselves before we started going into the classroom. So, in March I talked about how we've had 3 faculty meetings starting in January, March, and April, where we talked about a lot of definitions of diversity, equity, and inclusion as a full faculty and what that means to us here in Greenville. We then focused on the next couple of meetings on microaggressions and what we could potentially see in the school and how we could handle them. We had one faculty meeting where we did scenario situations where teachers were read a scenario and they had to, in that moment, respond to their colleague on it. So that, and our goal is going forward for next year, this is something that we will be continue to keep working on, is how do we now take that next step of continuing our professional learning, but also now integrating some of this professional learning into the classroom, into our instruction and curriculum here at the middle school. So again, it's some very good faculty meetings this spring. It was just eye-opening, some of the things and how we can start handling those in the classrooms too.
Want me to go, Matt? NCBI?
Sure.
So NCBI is the National Coalition National Coalition Building Institute. A lot of the focus is on inclusivity, and so it's not something that's been new to Greenville, but I think it was a strong focus this school year. Sydney Hewitt is one of the, Sydney Hewitt, Aaron Sharkey, and Kendall Fritz and Kylie Connolly are some of the faculty members that have been involved. We have a group about roughly 20 students, correct, Matt? I think so. And they really wanted to spread the word about what NCBI is and how to get more students involved. So what they did is they teamed up with the media club and they developed a podcast. And we're going to figure out how to share it out next year, what's the best way to share it out. And it really is just sharing, it's the students answering questions about what NCBI is, why they wanted to get involved, and how it could help our school. So we're trying to figure out how to roll that out for next school year and how to get more students involved in something that's pretty amazing. Anything to add, Matt?
Yeah, next steps that we had at our end of the school year meeting with the students. They're really itching to talk with other like-minded students as being one group they want to interact with. And traditionally NCBI, students have gotten chances to interact with students from other districts. With COVID, that didn't get to happen this year. We know for sure that we're going to be meeting with Ravina Koyman-Selkirk next year in the fall. And myself and Ms. Hewitt have been working with NCBI to put together sort of a summit with districts from around the capital region so that our students can get together with other like-minded students to learn from one another, from students across the region. And our students are also really anxious to bring this out to the other Greenville students to get them to join in on their conversations on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's part of the function of the podcast. And they're trying to figure out what's the best way to do that within our school day so they can include as many other students as possible.
Is there an opportunity for another club or anything more formalized that I'm thinking from a budget standpoint would need to be incorporated? So you don't have to answer it right now. If you want to, you can. I just don't want to put you on the spot.
There's been some talks around how to best do that, definitely. Yep.
Our last item under culture highlights is me, so new faculty supports. When I think of culture, I immediately also think about our mission statement and the piece about a sense of belonging. So certainly for faculty, it is very much an employee market. They don't have to choose Greenville. They can choose other school districts, and we see this in our hiring, where we are definitely in competition with other districts for hard-to-hire positions. So new faculty supports this year. I'm very proud of what we've been able to accomplish with our mentees. We had 21, I'm looking at Aaron, I think that's the right number off the top of my head, 21 mentees or new faculty members this year. And in terms of building a sense where they feel supported and they feel a sense of belonging, I can say from many interactions with them, the feedback that they've provided through the mentor program, that is very much the sense that they have, and they feel connected to Greenville. Of those 21 new faculty members, 20 of them will be with us next year. There is one individual that is going on to a different opportunity, but 20 of them are returning. Part of our mentor program that we started doing a couple of years ago was we do an end-of-year event called Wrap Up and Refresh. Wrap up the year, reflect on it, refresh around the year, but also start thinking about the coming school year. So we actually did that just last week. Started with a lunch that we had over 60 people. That was all of our mentors, our mentees, our administrative team, our supervisors coming together to celebrate them as a group. And really letting them know that while your first year has come to a conclusion and you might not have a formal mentor next year and you might not be part of the mentor program, you are certainly still part of this larger group and team, so reach out and ask for support when you need it. So I can say that that's one thing for me this year has been a huge success, what we've been able to do with the mentor program. Erin and I do Spartaning 101 every other month where we just come together and chat and make promise of baked goods that sometimes comes true, but overall they definitely feel supported. It's been a great opportunity to grow that mentor program and have so many of our new faculty returning with us again next year.
I have a question.
Yes.
The one person who's moving on, was there a post-mortem per se done as far as to why they left?
I don't think we call it that, but Erin in her role
We understood what he meant.
Erin in her role offers the opportunity for anybody leaving the organization to have a meeting with her and to provide feedback, their ideas, any concerns.
They receive like a digital exit survey, and then can always come in and meet with me and have an exit interview.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Maybe we should change the name. So, go ahead, Tracy.
So, for the mentor program, I mean, we just arbitrarily have said it's 1 year. As we are in a very competitive environment, would it make sense to lengthen, increase, obviously looking at the financial impact and weighing both, but would there be any type of advantage that would, again, help us to retain? Because if it costs us, usually they say, you know, it's a third of their salary in when you have a new hire in retraining and the lost learning and everything else, then in looking at the equation, should we extend the mentor program or offer, you know, I don't know, something, but I guess you understand. Can you read my mind and understand where I'm going?
I can. So two things on that. One, mentor committee has had conversation about that for a number of years. That's not a new idea of just how do we continue to support faculty, whether it is a more structured like the first year or just more informal, making sure we're kind of keeping tabs on those folks, right? And making sure that we continue to support them. So I know that will continue to be conversation for mentor committee, so certainly good conversation to have. The other is a very specific thing that somebody suggested to me, and Erin and I do this thing, Sparking 101, which is just the informal get-together. Somebody said, hey, can we still come to that next year, even though we're not? Yeah, absolutely, we Sparking 102, but yes, you can. So we're gonna extend the invite next year to all new faculty, plus those that were new this year. And honestly, that could just be an ongoing, just keep coming. You can be your 5th year here, but if you want to come back to this to share now with the first years and share some of your experiences, but also just continue to feel connected, and that there's not a cost to that other than Erin baking cookies. So that's something that's informal that we can easily do, but also mentor committee, we can have that conversation of something more formal. All right, so now we're going to shift from goal to just the highlights into some of our data that is in this area, so demographic data. Mr. Berkshire.
So we talked a little bit earlier, not a little bit, we talked quite a bit earlier in the evening about the impact of COVID. And one of the areas that Todd mentioned that has a specific impact was on absenteeism. So here we are to take a look at 2 measures of our attendance. The graph on the right is average daily attendance by school building, and that's from September to June, and you're seeing it over several years. Well, historically, our K-12 attendance daily average is about 93% at the end of the school year. And keep in mind what's constituted attendance has changed over the past couple of years. There's been shifts, right? March 2020 with a shutdown, and then following year virtual attendance at the secondary level, and so on and so forth. Our final average for this school year was 89.92%, or rounded slightly up to 90%. Just to look back and reflect a little bit, in January, Ellis's average daily attendance was 86%. The middle school was 93%, and the high schools was also 86%. We saw a recovery, 2 percentage points at Ellis, and a 3-point improvement at the high school. The middle school daily attendance average stayed about the same. Theirs was the strongest all year of the 3 schools. And I think all of this signals some stabilization and improvements with attendance over the course of the year, since we saw a little bit of balance regained with the COVID data. The other measure of our attendance to note is the chronic absenteeism, which is the table on the left. And that's defined as missing 10 or more days or 10% or more days of school, regardless of whether or not they are excused or unexcused absences. So if you were a COVID quarantine, it's excused absence, you could still be chronically absent. You can see that we had a large increase in the percentage of our students who are currently designated as chronically absent. So by the end of the school year, that's about 18 or more days absent. COVID protocols certainly impacted that percentage. There's some really interesting data in the chronic absenteeism table here that I wanted to highlight. To see the percentage of students who were chronically absent decrease from January to June, from my experience, is exceptionally rare. Typically, this number only increases as the year progresses, right? Students whose pattern of attendance has made them chronically absent, missed 10% of days by April or by November, will by April have missed still 10% or more of days, right? It's a pattern. So to see this 4-point percentage drop at the elementary level, and from January to the end of the year, and to see that only a slight increase at the high school level and virtually no increase at the middle school level from January to now, I think really highlights how unusual of a school year this was, attendance-wise. I think, again, it signals a stabilization, and in some cases an improvement in attendance since January. And I think that can be attributed to the hard work of all of our teachers, our PPS staff, our attendance team, and of course our families who work to get their kids to school every day.
Matt, I just have a question. So how do I read it? So for example, at the high school, in June 2021 to this school year,
Yep.
so I say 33% of what missed 10% or more days? Help me understand what the denominator is.
So 33% of all high schoolers, by the end of June of this school year, 33% of our students had missed 10% or more school days. If we go all the way to the left on that table, back in June of 18-19 school year, at the end of that school year, 29% of all high schoolers had missed 10% or more of school days.
Okay, and then I guess the second part of my question is something that you mentioned about the excused and unexcused.
Yeah.
How difficult would it be to separate out, to really, in my mind, it's the unexcused that is kind of the, I don't want to say the real issue, but if some of the excused could have been driven by quarantine, then it's in a way not a fair assessment because they're supposed to not come to school.
Well,
so the
yeah.
real absentee or the real issue is the unexcused.
Yeah, especially in a year as unique as we've come to here. In your packet, which page is that on, Todd? In each of the building profiles, the elementary profile, the middle school profile, and the high school profile, you will see a table. Page looks like this. So it has the attendance rate for all students by grade, and then it has attendance rate for special education students, and at the bottom is a table called percentages of students that were unexcused.
Okay.
And that gives exactly what you're looking for. And I was looking at this with Todd. It actually, typically, I'm just looking at the high school right now, it was about a 30% difference in the percentage of absences that were unexcused this year as compared to last year. So for general education students at the high school, last year was 94% of absences were unexcused. This year it was 64% of absences were unexcused. So really substantial impact there. So you can look at that information in your building profile for elementary, for middle, and for high.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, that's all I had for attendance if there aren't any more questions.
Sorry, Mr. Reed. This is
Sorry. All right, in terms of the student referrals discipline there, so again, mid-year, one of the things that, with our PBI's program, we, over the past few years, really encouraged where, and this is as a faculty, we've had discussed this and created documents to utilize as teams. They take a look at like minor infractions that they try to handle on their own in the classroom. And then, but we have a flow chart that then shows to, okay, if a student has so many minor infractions, does it then eventually get to a referral? Because again, a lot of those things are again, minor things that usually a teacher can resolve with a student one-on-one in the classroom. If you take a look at the referrals, so one of the things to keep in mind is that, the last few years, the data has been a little bit different with when students have been in and haven't been in. Keep in mind that June of 1920, that data only goes up through March 13th of 2020, that spring, where it stopped at 198 because students were remote the rest of the year. But taking a look at just even this year's data, we had students in every day this year. I mean, we had 255 students in the building this year, so there was 248 referrals. When you get a chance and are able to dive more into each building profile, you'll see there's a chart. There's that same type of chart that shows the overall referrals, but there's also a chart that shows the percentage of students who had 5 or more referrals. So 6-8 this past year, that's 14 students. Okay, that's 70 referrals right there. Most likely there was more referrals with some of those students, but again, you're looking at less than 1 referral then per student, kind of breaking some of that down. So again, those are key things that next week we'll dive into more as a BLT and really take a hard look at that. And that's where, like Matt was talking about earlier, where he and P will take a student, really take a look when they have X amount of referrals. Okay, what are some other interventions we may need to do with this student? What is the real problem? Most students are really good about it. They have some sort of problem, they're honest about it, and usually you can make it a teachable moment and you move on from it. So it's usually that small percentage of students that we've got to keep working with. And you do see growth with that as they go through middle school and even into high school. So
Maybe one of these times I can go first. Okay, we'll go backwards because I feel like a lot of thunder gets stolen, which is fine. We're saying similar things. I think one
He's
is
like that anyway.
that's what I heard. That's what I
I let you go first, Christy.
Thank you.
Remember?
Yes, you did.
You're welcome.
Because a lot of what I was going to say, Brian had already shared as well too, is that the data is comparable to previous years. And the one thing that Brian did share with me earlier in the year that I really liked is the work that his teams have done with regards to what constitutes a referral. Because there's data out there that shows that once a teacher writes a referral, you're kind of breaking that relationship, and then it's that much more difficult for the student and the teacher when they, when the student returns to that classroom. So that's stuff that that I had planned to work on next year as well too. Is just kind of focus on what are some things that we can focus on, or that you can take care of in the classroom. When should referrals be written, and when should a student be sent down to the office? But as always, we're looking for different ways to improve, and it really goes back to the relationships that teachers have with students and what they're doing in their classroom. Like, are they making learning fun where kids want to be there and want to stay in the classroom? So those are our focuses for next year.
So,
You want the mic?
Sorry, yeah, I can be loud, but we'll use the microphone. So with the perception survey, going on to this next slide here, as Todd had said earlier, this is our 7th year with this perception survey, and it is a survey that we really take a hard look at as a BLT every year, and it is interesting. And if you look in, whether it's the district level plan this past year or building levels, we use data right from the perception survey to try to increase this past year. One of the things, so if you remember, the scales on that, a 1 is strongly disagree with the statement, to 5, strongly agree. Again, those are analyzed each year. We start to build new initiatives off them at a different, going into the next year. We have a couple of examples of some of at the end of each of these perception surveys are 2 open-ended response questions, kind of what are the strengths of the school, what are the good things about the school, what are the things that we could maybe improve. So here are some, just a few examples of some of the strengths and challenges from this past year with students and faculty that we've kind of these were some of the things that stuck out when you went through and read the open-ended responses. Some of the strengths, supportive adults, relationships with teachers, staff, principal, feelings of friendship. A challenge of that, though, among students is you also have some that are saying wish there was more respect from everyone. So those are some things that we've got to dive into a little bit deeper next week and just kind of, okay, where do we go with that? How do we keep trying to address things like that? Again, from the faculty, working as a team is considered a strength, but then challenges are, shared decision making. So again, where is that balance, and is it broken down to, when they talk about working as a team, is it more maybe just individually at each grade level, or is it as a whole, as a building, when you talk about the shared decision making? So again, things that we will take a look at next week. I know last year, I thought the 2 days went really well, so I think people are excited to come in. Again, it'll be long 2 days, but it'll be good to really break the data down a little bit more. Oh, and just real quickly with some of those challenges, so I said that scales of 1 to 5, so some of the challenges that are over there from this past year really fell at the kind of high 2 level, low 3. So it's not like they were 1s and it was strongly disagree. It was kind of somewhere right in the middle, a lot of those challenges.
Okay, we're ready. We'll go on to goal 3, which is community. Todd, did you want to say anything before I run over? Usually you do some kind of transition.
You're good, Christy, you just did.
All right, thank you. So this is actually very exciting that I get to talk a little bit about this, because when I started at Greenville, actually I think it was this time last year, I came in and I don't think we had masks on during the board meeting in which I was appointed. We worked throughout the summer, and then just when I thought we were going into a school year where it was going to be, somewhat back to normal, we all had to put our masks back on. So it was really hard for me to get a flavor of what Greenville was really like, because everything was so closed off, and we had to follow so many restrictions. So with the return of events this year, I feel like I really got to see what Greenville truly was. So here are just some highlights from, just a little disclaimer too. So some of the topics completed are different from what we had planned due to all of the challenges due to COVID. But as the restrictions lifted, our school was able to welcome back after school and evening events, in addition to inviting the community back in as well too. So if you see at the top the return of events and the different volunteer opportunities, all of these things listed up there, the Immigration Day, Ag Awareness, Picnic on the Green, and the visit to Potter Hollow were very well attended. I just did some research on some of the field trips that some of our students went on this year. Just recently, I know the high school science club went on a whale watching excursion, and they did see lots of whales. I saw proofs in the pictures. I believe the elementary school, one of the grades down there, went to the aquarium in Rotterdam. The senior trip, they were able to go to Newport, Rhode Island, and were able to enjoy the day. There was a trip to Metropolitan Museum of Art. I think the middle school went to the New York State Museum and what was the Preserve? Preserve, just to name a few. I know there was guest speakers that came back, that were able to come into the school and speak to our students as well too. So those are just to name a few. I think many of you attended either the concerts or the musicals this year. So I'm really excited to see what next year's concerts and musicals look like as well. The PTSA hosted quiz night, and it was everything that the PTSA had bragged about. So I greatly appreciated that. That was a lot of fun. And I think there was a book fair at all levels, at all buildings this year. Just something new too that the high school and middle school were doing are the morning announcements, and the video link is available on the library website so that anyone from our community can join in the morning as well too, just to see what's going on. Mr. Reeve, he does some of his morning announcements, but there's also students that hop on occasionally. And the high school, it's like a rotating crew. We also have students that are behind the scenes for the morning video announcements for both middle school and high school. So it's kids from the media club that are running the announcements. Earlier in the year, Mr. Albright and Ms. Conley were involved, and they kind of just do their own thing and hang out here, where the green room is in that little conference room over there. We were able to mail paper report cards home. That is something that was on our set plan as district-wide. So K-12, we sent home report cards every quarter. We also did the interim grade reports as well too. There was the parent webinar survey where Dr. Jen Machant, I think she hosted 4 or 5 different parent series. They offered strategies on how to intrinsically motivate children, how to deal with stress and anxiety, and I think there was another one on how to, it was called keeping the tech in check, which had to do with monitoring and limiting the amount of technology that students used while they were at home.
I just want to give you kudos for going back to paper report cards. You tried the digital, and it seems like the paper has an added benefit, so kudos for kind of doing that.
Well, you can't forget to look online. I think that's part of it too. Some parents get so busy with their own lives, or if you have multiple kids, sometimes you just forget to log in to check report cards. So when something comes in the mail and you open it, it's right there. Then you're like, oh, okay. So it's a nice reminder. And then the perception survey from the parents. While we collected a lot of valuable information from the perception survey, here are the top strengths and challenges across the district. So some of the strengths were caring and dedicated staff, communication from teachers and school, extracurricular activities. Challenges, yes, communication, I'll talk about that in 1 second. Bullying, discrimination from racial slurs, and discipline/fighting. So as you can see, communication is listed both as a strength and as a challenge. We saw comments about communication on both sides and wanted to acknowledge that. So just depending on the perception of the person filling out the survey. But we will continue to grow our strengths, and we will continue to build the challenges into next year's goals.
Home stretch. So those are our 3 goals, and we're going to end kind of where we started with some of the same visuals. So the first one being this multiple measures of data. So this is the check-in. Did you hear demographic data?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Student learning data?
Yes.
Yes. Perception data?
No.
Yeah. Yes. So these 3 different areas of data, we made sure we included those within the framework of those 3 district goals. Repeating myself from earlier, a lot of more information, more details are in those individual building profiles, and we will continue to work through and update those as more data becomes available. But again, important to think about those multiple measures of data and how we use all these different data sets to truly understand where are those strengths and things that we can be proud of, and where are those areas of challenge that we want to focus our greatest efforts for improvement. So where does this leave us? School improvement planning for the 22-23 school year. In all of this that we shared tonight, you'll notice we didn't mention TSI and ESSA and the state compliance pieces. So those are important pieces that I have here at the end, But in all of the work that we've done around school improvement, we continue to work on doing it for the purpose of continuous school improvement, not for the purpose of checking a box for compliance for New York State. And I say that every time I do these presentations, and I think it's important for us to always be thinking about, long after we are off the list that we are on for New York State, we want these processes to continue. With that said, also important to just kind of give you a reminder of the important pieces that go along with our identifications. So here's kind of the nuts and bolts. We are a targeted support and improvement school. The acronym for that is TSI, specifically for our subgroup of special education students at the middle school. That data now is 4 years old and older that led to that designation, but we still live under that designation for the middle school special ed subgroup. That means that we as a district are a target district, or a TD. With that said, like I already mentioned, we're committed to using the process pre-K through 12, but what we're required to do is a district comprehensive improvement plan. The state in the documents that have come out this year, I'm summarizing a ton of information in some of these bullet points, but there's a big emphasis, similar to last year, on alignment and connectedness. So as you work as a district, align the efforts that you were working on for school improvement and make sure there are things that are connected across the district. But we are required to do what's called a district comprehensive improvement plan. That's what is due by the end of July, that is reviewed by the state. The other piece we have to do is a school comprehensive education plan. That's for an individual building. So the state and all the documents that have come out, again, summarizing a lot of information, they put a lot of emphasis at the school level on school values and aspirations. For us, I connect that to our vision and our mission statement and the things that we value here at Greenville. So we are required to do a school comprehensive education plan for the middle school, because that is where our identification is. But we as a district each year have made a commitment to creating a school comprehensive education plan for all 3 buildings, elementary, middle school, and high school. Those are all reviewed locally. They are not submitted to the state. Even the middle school one that we are required to do, we don't actually have to submit it to the state. It's a locally reviewed and adopted process. So that's kind of the most important information, or just the pieces of the facts around our identification. So that leads us to the next steps, which is the school improvement workshop that, as we've mentioned a couple of times, will be happening next week on July 6th and 7th. So I want to take just a few more minutes to share a little bit more information. Again, this is like a trailer, your preview of what will be happening next week on the 6th and 7th. So some of this, we have the great benefit of the Rural Schools Project. We have benefited as a district from the individual interventions, but I think even more so than that, on the bigger picture, is just the work around school improvement, as the organization exists for the purpose of supporting schools around school improvement. So because of this partnership, I've been able to work with them to get some feedback on our processes that we use and the school improvement plans that we have here at Greenville. So again, this is all going to be part of our workshop next week, but I wanted to highlight a couple of key pieces here. So in speaking with them and working with them and learning from their framework for school improvement, some key takeaways or lessons learned that we will be working into the process for 2022-23. So the first is increase alignment among the buildings. So when they looked at our plans, this is actually a little chart over on the right, they noticed 2 big things of just the number of strategies that we were trying to work on. And while there's connectedness, there could be more alignment and more connection between the different buildings and the district. So those 2 bullet points actually go together. Increase alignment among the buildings and limit the strategies to allow for more focus. So the little data chart over there on the right, that's the current plans for 21-22. When you break it down and look at the number of strategies that we had identified that we were going to work on, district plan had 11, elementary 16, middle school 18, high school 11, for a total of 55 strategies or focus areas for school improvement. So we are a pretty great organization and have great people here, but to focus on 55 strategies is a little bit much. So this was one of my aha moments as I worked with them, and them just giving feedback and talking through is like, okay, we really need to align, connect, and focus so that we don't have 55. Another piece that goes along with that, building plans influence the district plan rather than the reverse. So that the district plan really becomes the plan that brings the 3 building plans all together, It's not, here's the district plan, and now buildings figure out what you're gonna do to support this. So it's all in spirit of connection and alignment. And the last piece, which I feel like we've gotten better at each year in recent years, but it's one of the areas that I know we need to continue to work on, so I'm utilizing our partnership with them to help in this area, is what do we look for measurements, and what do we do for monitoring? So yes, we have the mid-year, but what are we doing internally, quarterly, or even monthly to monitor what we said we were going to be working on for improvement, and what are the measurements that we are using along the way and at the conclusion points to determine how we have done. So that will all feed into next week's school improvement plan, our workshop, which is the 6th and 7th. Kind of big key takeaway, we have for several years had these same 3 goals. I don't see those changing, maybe a little wordsmithing at some point along the way, but we've kind of done that the past couple of years, and I feel like they're in a really good place. So what that means is these 3 goals, the curriculum, the culture, and the community, the actual big goal itself will remain. What will change and continue to change each year are those individual bullet points underneath. Those are those strategies. So on this document, it shows the bullet points as the strategies. When we work on the strategies in each building, and then at the district level, again, not having 55 in total, but a number smaller than that, and making more connections between them. But the big takeaway, those 3 district goals will remain for future years. So where does that leave us? On the school improvement development calendar, moving that red box down to the next section from where we started at the beginning of this presentation. It is that school improvement workshop, which will be happening next week. We will be back on July 11th, or some of us as the admin team will be back on the 11th to share out what happened during those 2 days and to give you a summary of the work that took place. Again, digging into those challenges and looking at our data, digging into our data and identifying what we want to focus on. So we'll be sharing that with the board on July 11th. And then later in that same week, the administrative team gets together as an admin team, and we spend, I think we have 2 days scheduled this year to take all the information from the 2 days of school improvement and the kind of the drafts and ideas and put this together into what will become the district comprehensive improvement plan. Last slide. Any other questions? More information? Yes, Duncan.
Who did the math on the slide here?
Which math? Oh no.
The plan and the strategies.
If it's wrong, it wasn't me.
Oh. I came up with 56, but.
Oh, so we're going even higher.
We're going up one.
You're right, Duncan.
See, we're already doing better.
No, we're doing worse.
Now we're
going up
doing
one.
worse, we have to cut down.
Actually, I think maybe one of those is a typo because I'm pretty sure the total was 55. But thank you for checking my math. I will check and see.
I was going to suggest, if you're building a chart like that, you can use Microsoft to do the math for you.
To do the math?
Yeah, I do it.
Yes, I need reflex.
I make light,
adding
but
and
you guys
subtracting
did a
to
heck of a
50.
lot of work, and you said you were going to provide us with additional information. I believe you have, some of which we haven't digested yet,
Yeah.
but you had answers to every question we asked, and personally, I thank you very much.
Yeah, it's like an impressive amount of information.
I'm happy. This was great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very nice.
Thank you for the feedback.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Duncan said. You were able to answer all of our questions, and I know we, keep throwing them out and everything else. So thank you very much. Thank you for providing the additional reading. I personally love that stuff, so it's obvious how much work went into it. We completely understand that it's just the beginning, and there's much more work that you're going to be compiling, working together, and everything else. And so thank you very, very much. I do agree completely with your statement that it's about the pre-K through 12 and continuing, because there's always room to improve for Greenville to be the best that it can be. And so there's always an opportunity in everything. And so it's wonderful to see that we've been able to really align so much effort in between the different buildings and so forth, and it really is a testament to all of your work, so thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to now turn it over to Denise then for, let's see, 6.3, athletic update.
Okay, so you're gonna see a presentation on the athletics.
Oops. As I always say, athletics is our biggest extracurricular activity that we have here at the school. We have a variety of extracurricular activities that are important to kids. I think it's important for us to continue to grow the programs here. And, you know, there are a couple programs that I know keep coming up that eventually, hopefully, I can talk to the board about a little bit more. One of them is football, and the other one is bowling. But getting right into this year. Okay, so you see the demographics here, and Duncan, please check my math. They're looking at many, many sheets.
You're gonna make me do that.
You can kind of look at where we were at with modified sports. Gives you a good indication of how many students we're going to be coming through with subgroups. And then our JV sports, and then our varsity sports. All in all, 7 through 12, we had 271 students that participated in the athletic program. Some of them were tri-sport athletes, meaning they participated every season. Some of them participated in 2, and some of them only single sport athletes.
Denise, if I remember from previous years, this number, the 271, is down from previous years. Or I guess my question is this number down from previous years?
I'd have to go back and look and see what those numbers are. I didn't look at that before I came here. I would say that, you know, our kids this year, they were so excited just to get back. I would say it's pretty consistent with where we've been. We've had some programs that have had lower numbers than others this year. I've noticed that there's, in girls sports, seems to be an area of concern with some of our sports. This year, records broken. Bryn Fitzmaurice, she is now a Greenville all-time 3-point scorer. She had 96 of them this season. That is amazing. And that also is a Section 2 record. Ella Mulholland in track and field is now the record holder for the 200-meter run. And then also our girls broke the 4x100-meter relay. Carolyn Kosich, Ella Mulholland, Julia Slater, and Josephine O'Hare. So that's pretty good for this year. This next slide, or the next 3 slides, basically I gave to you the information for, I don't know if you guys were at awards night, but these were the awards that were given out to our student athletes, coaches. Sometimes the coaches would have kids also vote on these awards. So as you look at these, and I'll have Todd just kind of scroll through them, but the criteria that we came up with for a coach's award, so as you're looking at the names up here, just kind of keep these things in mind. But a coach's award recipient is a player who is a positive vocal leader, is a leader both on and off the playing surface, assists the coach with team activities and communication, exhibits good sportsmanship and character, will do whatever is asked of him or her for the betterment of the team, and is reliable in attendance at practices and competitions. And that's a coach's award. The MVP, or the most valuable player, is a player who does the most individually for the team, either offensively or defensively, raises the level of play around him or her, always gives a little extra without being asked, always strives to get or be better, and works hard at practices and games, is a student of the game, helps others on the team grow and be more successful, never gives up, earns and gains the respect of other players, coaches, spectators, and officials throughout the league, at the section level, and at the state level. So we, again, have some incredible kids that are involved, not only in the athletic program, but They are also scholar athletes, which kind of brings us, I think, to that next slide. This year, 14 of our 16 programs were scholar athlete teams. That means that they were able to maintain, 75% of that team was able to maintain a 90 or better average. And I kind of broke this down for you, number of scholar athletes by season. So again, these are varsity only teams. They don't do this at the JV or the modified level. For the fall, we had 46 students that were scholar athletes. Winter, we had 29. And then spring, we had 45. And you look at the winter and you say, oh, that's a little bit lower, but we don't, our programs offered in the winter are less than in the fall and the spring. Next slide is our Patroon Conference Championship teams this year. Our boys golf team, boys soccer team, girls soccer team, and our girls tennis team, which is amazing.
So nice to hear the girls tennis.
Yep.
Just amazing. They only just started that,
Yep.
really.
I know, and it's very exciting to have it.
I don't even know if Mike knows that, but we had girls playing on the boys team up until what, 2 years ago?
Pre-COVID.
1920 was the first year, because
Yes.
Alex was on it, so
Yeah.
that's my relate.
And here we got it.
I think it was in the 1920 school year,
Yeah.
right? Yes.
That's great.
Yeah, and I would credit Mr. Haller for his efforts in that. I know that he had those kids in physical education class and got them all excited and said, we're offering this next year, and we had a great turnout. So I appreciate his efforts in that. Our postseason this year, we had a Section 2 team championship, which is our boys soccer team. We were runners-up in golf and girls tennis. And we also had a couple individual champions, which was Karen Cullen in wrestling, 138-pound Class C, and regional champion. Wrestling's a little bit different, you know, you get the sectional championship, Class C, where all the Class C schools just come together, and then you get the regional championship, where all of the school districts come together. So that's a pretty good accomplishment for Karen. And Finn Kosich for track was the 3,200 meter champion. Also, our boys soccer were regional co-champions. So when our boys soccer team finished their season, they were undefeated. All right. And then Patroon Conference All Conference. I'm not reading through all of these names. You guys have that information right there in front of you. And again, these kids are being recognized by other coaches within our league as being some of the top athletes in the league. So that speaks volumes to the coaching that's going on and the level of athleticism of our kids. Also noteworthy, Vinny Davis, I love this picture, got his 100th win in wrestling this year, and that's quite an accomplishment for a wrestler over their career. 56 students earned a varsity letter, meaning that this was their first year participating on a varsity sport. Varsity tri-sport athletes, we had 10 underclassmen and 9 seniors. I would love to see this increase if we could, especially in a small rural school. It's really, really important for our kids to participate in as many sports as they possibly can to keep growing the programs. So I would like to see that. And then our senior career sport athletes, we had 12 seniors that were able throughout their whole entire career to maintain a 92% or better GPA, which again speaks to the caliber of kids that we have within the program.
Were they the only kids over 90? I mean, you use 90 for the...
92% or better, just the seniors.
Yeah, but you use 90 for the
Scholar athletes.
scholar record.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
why did 92 show up here?
Because that's what the cutoff that we decided as a school district that was going to be.
Oh,
NISBA
okay.
puts together the
All
scholar
right.
athletes.
So there may have been other kids that better than 90 under that.
Yes.
Okay, all right. I thought maybe everybody who was over 90 was at 92 or better.
No,
So that-
no. Just like a
That's
cutoff
great.
we have here at Greenville. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. I think it's wonderful to see students participating as athletes, because I think that there are a lot of lessons that they learn, time management and sportsmanship and everything else. So it's really nice to see that they are engaged in the school and everything else. So thank you. All right, then I'm going to move us on to action items. And again, before I do, thank you for, that was a lot of information and we really appreciate it. So I need a motion to accept the Committee on Special Education recommendation. Wait, where's the finance? Hold on, is finance is usually
The
first?
next one below it.
Okay. Okay, so 7-1. So motion to accept the Committee on Special Education recommendations.
Are you Duncan and Eric, thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to...
Dave, did you agree to that? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
What? I raised my.
I didn't see Dave's hand.
She's yelling.
He's used to being yelled at.
He's still out in Yellowstone.
Alrighty, I need a motion to approve the finance reports for the month ending June 30th, 2022.
I have Eric and second Angela, thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I need a motion to approve the personnel agenda.
Angela, Eric?
Any discussion?
Yes, I have a question for Mike.
Okay.
On all these positions, Mike, that are extra compensation, department chair, extra help after school, all of them are listed. Is there some evaluation done on those positions at the end of the year, you know?
Well, I think a lot of what you just heard in regards to, the after-school help and things like that, that is some of the data that we'll use as far as how it's working out. For some of the other clubs, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm just wondering how we, to be blunt, how do we know we're getting what we're paying for?
It's one of the things that I brought up to our leadership team and talked with the GFA a little bit about is some evaluation about, we're paying stipends for extracurricular clubs and activities. We need to have a little bit more of accountability for what's happening during these times, whether it's meeting dates, whether it's minutes, whether it's those types of things.
Year-end report?
Yeah, exactly. So we have an idea of, are we getting, like you said, what we pay for? Are kids benefiting from this? Are we seeing membership in these clubs and activities growing? So we've had some conversation. My understanding is about 10 or 11 years ago, there was some process put into place. Taking a look at that, but I would like to work with the union to kind of revamp that and kind of get that up to speed so we have it for, our auditors when they come by and they want to see, we're writing a check to someone for a club they're running. We need to have some evidence that they've actually ran the club.
Would it be appropriate for an individual during a year-end review, eval, if they're also doing something else? The evaluator could ask them, you're doing X club, can you tell me how that went?
Yeah, we could do that. We could have some of that conversation, but I'd like to capture it formally.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a good question.
That's it.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the updated 22-23 school calendar. So the following updates were made to the calendar on September 7th. We have classes begin grades 1 through 12. We have a kindergarten open house also on the 7th. Then on September 8th, classes begin for kindergarten. And June 23rd, we have graduation at the high school at 6 p.m. So those were the changes to the calendar.
Angela, Eric?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the bond resolution dated June 27, 2022 of the Board of Education of the Greenville Central School District authorizing not to exceed $1,193,760 aggregate principal amount of serial general obligation bonds to finance the acquisition of school buses at an estimated aggregate maximum cost of $1,256,760, levy of tax and annual installments and payment thereof, the expenditure of such sum for such purpose, and determining other matters in connection therewith. That was a mouthful. Motion?
Jim? Dave?
Okay, any discussion?
One question for Janet. This is a replacement cycle, right?
Yes.
So are the buses that they're replacing, are we trading those in or? Okay.
Yes.
So that, the calculation assumes some kind of value.
Yes.
How did you gain that value?
The
They
trading
gave you,
values?
yeah, they gave you.
They
gave you
told
an
us,
offer on it?
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I need a motion to approve the transfer to the NYSTRS, New York State Teachers Retirement Contribution Reserve Subfund.
Eric? Need a second? Dave, thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
I have some
Duncan, go ahead.
discussion. I wanted to make sure, I'm sorry, I'm wrong, okay? I was thinking of the health we can't do. Okay, I was wondering how we could do this, but we have been doing this all along. We anticipate that, and we've been putting it into that fund all along.
Yes, you can only put in a certain percentage of the previous year's gross salaries, and there is a threshold, and we're still under that threshold.
But I was equating it with the thing we can't do, and that is to promote retirement insurance, health insurance, and that's what it's bothering me, okay. I goofed up.
Okay.
I'm fine, we're fine, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I need a motion to approve updated policy 5110 and the instructional policy.
Dave, second? Thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to ask now off the record, did we,
Go ahead.
Fix
We
the
made the
references?
change. Yes, we did. I
fix
should have
the
mentioned that. Yes,
Okay.
what we did is we left it as the superintendent and we took out
Okay,
or
good.
designate.
Thank you.
That is correct. I need a motion to appoint the election inspectors and board of voter registration for the 2022 capital project vote and the 2023 annual vote and election.
Wow.
Eric and Duncan?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Wait.
Oh, okay, so before we vote,
My discussion is, I just thank these people for doing it.
that's very nice.
Someone's got to do it, I'm glad they do it.
Right. All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve transportation agreement between the Greenville Central School District and the Coxsackie-Athens Central School District for transportation of Coxsackie students to Questar 3 Catskill Academy for the 2022 summer program.
Jim and Angela?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I need a motion to approve the preschool memorandum of agreement between the Greenville Central School District and the United Methodist Church, UMC Daycare Center for 22-23.
Jim and Eric?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Jim?
Jim?
Thank you.
I need a motion to approve the contract between the Greenville Central School District and the Wildwood School Year Program from September 7th, 2022 through June 23rd, 2023, and/or Wildwood Summer Extension Program from July 6th, 2022 through August 16th, 2022.
Angela, Eric?
Any discussion?
How can I get in on this racket? $58,000, one student a year. Wow. Holy jeez.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I need a motion to approve the contract between the Greenville Central School District and Parsons Child and Family Center for the 22-23 summer and school year program.
Eric? Dave?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the 21-22 Health and Welfare Services contract between the Greenville Central School District and the City School District of Albany in the amount of $6,495.51.
Eric? Jim?
Any discussion? Boy, they just got this under the wire, didn't they?
Mhm.
Oh, they all, yeah. All of them are just at the very end.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the proposal from Terracon Consultants, NY Inc. for geotechnical engineering services related to the tennis court asphalt cores in the amount of $1,750. Any discussion?
I'd like to make sure I understand. We're just, this is literally just drilling down in the cores? Who does the analysis of all that then?
They do.
They do.
Well, they pull the core samplings out. Somebody's got to analyze.
They send it back to their lab.
Okay,
And
so
analyze it.
that's
They do it.
incorporated into this, it's not just
Yeah.
pulling them out. They'll come back and tell us,
Yep.
okay, all right. I
Do they have a sense of?
was hoping you'd say that, but I didn't see it.
Right, and do we have a sense of timing on how long it takes them, like once we give them the approval?
For them to do the cores.
I guess the cores and the analysis.
The
and-
cores, they said that next week or the following week. Because I
Okay.
told them as fast as possible.
Okay,
I did not ask about how long it takes for the lab work to come back.
okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve, I'm sorry, the motion to approve the proposal from SCI Design Group for the design services for the middle high school baseball and softball field drainage.
Jim and Angela?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve NYSCD submissions for the middle school, high school dust collection systems project.
Jim, and a second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
No? Oh, and nay.
Are we good?
They didn't vote. So
Not
he said
vote?
no.
I'm in
No.
not favor of that.
Okay, so, any against? I guess that's where you say yes, okay.
I just wanted to change things up.
Okay, I need a motion to accept a donation to the Greenville Central School District from the Greenville Athletic Association in the amount of $5,000 for the purchase of an MB3 mat basket.
With the
Angela
purchase
and
of
Dave,
it.
thank you.
Any discussion?
Yes. Can you explain to me what an MB3 map basket is?
You beat me to it, Duncan.
Did you look at the attachments?
No.
No.
Okay.
Oh, was there a
I
picture?
saw it was a donation
There
letter,
is.
so I didn't, oh.
Denise, do you want to explain what it is?
A mat basket is basically, it'll hold 3 mats, so it'll be easier to transport mats to and from.
For wrestling and
The
cheer.
big heavy mats.
For wrestling?
Oh, for
Got
wrestling.
wheels on it. It'll help a lot.
Is it for wrestling?
Yes.
Wrestling or cheer.
Wrestling or cheer, yes, and mats are definitely advantageous.
Yeah, they are, okay. I just didn't know what MB, and I did not look at them.
And-
Sorry,
It's okay.
I missed it. I'd like to amend the motion and change the amount to 6,000, but that's probably not gonna go anywhere.
Well, it's coming as a donation, so you could talk to them.
It's better
Any
than
other
what we did
discussion?
before Marty paid for the first one.
Right, there you go. All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve surplus items.
Eric and Angela, thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to switch us over to discussion. So we had 8.1 board goals and objectives. So just a quick update. At the July meeting, we will have Duncan talking about the open forum. We will have Angela and Jim talking about the members' orientation, kind of overall packet and recommendations. One thing that if you are bringing anything to hand out, it'll be helpful to have extra copies, just in case someone in the public would like to see it, or if you want to email it to Daphne and she can put it directly into board docs, in case someone viewing the recording would like access to it. Okay, so that's just kind of a quick update. I think that while we had originally decided to discuss it at this meeting, just given the presentations and the length, we decided to move it to July. So that was it for me.
Thank you.
Okay, and reminders, a couple of reminders. We have the July 11th organization and business meeting. And let's see, it is with a public hearing on the video conferencing. And this will allow us, after the public hearing, that if a board member is out sick or anything, then we do have the option of participating remotely for that. Let's see, we also have August 1st, please mark your calendars. We've got a board leadership workshop from 6 to 9. And then we have July meeting, August 8th, then is our normal board meeting. So right now, those are the key dates, just if you could, everyone put them on your calendar, please. So now moving on to 9, input items for discussion at the next meeting. Does anyone have any topics that they would like to see covered?
I do, Tracy. Reflecting on the last election that Jay and I went through, I will tell you that I didn't agree with a lot of the things that some of the folks had talked about, but some of the things that were coming out of the community I do agree with. And two of them I think can be addressed if we consider, and I would like this put on the July agenda, two of the things that could be addressed is we consider reinstituting our budget advisory committee, which didn't happen, at least last year, maybe for the last 2 years. So I asked the board to have a discussion on that and then possibly reinstitute it. We'll give the community an opportunity to have a voice in their money that's being spent. Give the community an opportunity to have more input. And those are the two things that I heard that I do agree with. And the other thing, I hope the board is interested in being a bit more transparent on some of the things that we can be transparent on as we move along through the year. That's it.
I got one, I'm not sure I got two.
Go ahead.
You wanted to do the Budget Advisory Committee, reinstitute that. What was the other thing you said?
Just to be more transparent with the things.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I have two, you wanted to, okay. I thought you were going to.
No, I thought you had the two,
thought you
and I
were gonna
wasn't
help me
sure
out
what
here.
the second one was. Okay.
And I think it actually may have been more than 2 years, because I think Jay was on one of the last budget advisory committees, so it would have to be at least 3 years, possibly 4. So we can absolutely have a discussion about what would be involved in bringing that back. The timing involved in that, because it would be obviously around the budget when we start budget development, and then if you have names of community members that might be interested, so that we can reach out for that. Because I think, if I remember correctly, and Duncan, you were on the committee too, at one point, there were 10 individuals, would kind of
Well,
wax
we
and
had,
wane.
we had, at the time, Tammy was always there, okay? And she was a, quote, ex officio. She was there more as a presenter, or to answer any questions that were there. But basically, the rest, I don't remember we were ever as high as 10. I think we got more like 6, okay, as a maximum. I don't know, Daphne might even have a better idea. Huh?
I can look back.
Yeah. I remember the reason we kind of got rid of it, and it was when we did a look at a whole bunch of committees, and that was one that we thought was just, it was really a tough timing thing to do, and the fact that we were doing the consolidated some of the budget meetings, and it was just going to be tough. But I'm certainly not against the idea of looking to see if we can do that again, and
My idea was that, that came through some of the things that I had heard, I know you folks probably heard it too, was that there's a deep lack of understanding of how the board functions. And so that, if that's not the right vehicle, if the Budget Advisory Committee is not the right vehicle to get the information out to the community on how we function, then maybe we can talk about that. The other thing is that I felt that there was a deep lack of understanding of how the budget is developed and how schools function financially. And all the things that we heard come from somewhere. Lack of understanding or a desire to do things in a different direction. And I think that if Duncan's right and you have 10 people, you can't have a huge committee, but the more people that are in the community that go out and share knowledge with their group of people or friends or whatever, and they do it properly and correctly, then that's more people understand how we actually function than, than just the 7 of us go and talk to the community.
I'd like to endorse that we do that, but I'd like to ask everybody to think, and it's interesting because you've talked about the forums that we're looking at and the goals, and maybe that's an alternative to a quote-unquote advisory committee. It's going to be really tight for Janet and for Mike to find time to fit this stuff in and get it to the Budget Advisory Committee before they get it to us.
I don't think they had that many meetings. I mean,
We used to, I think we used to have about 4.
Yeah.
Okay, and we started in November. Okay, before the first things that we would normally see. But then I think Tammy would talk to us about what they were looking at and give us an outline from the I think that was probably in December where we got the outline that was being asked for from the various components of, in the whether it be from the individual schools or from building and grounds or whatever. And I was just looking at that and kind of, it was very much a precursor to what we get as a board. I certainly don't have any reason to object to the idea, but I think maybe we ought to think about alternatives to do the same thing. Maybe if we had a forum in October that discussed how the budget is developed and whatever, that might do the same thing you're looking for. But let's have that discussion next month when Dave asks for it. I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Because I do think that there's different merit to having it. While all of the information is on the website, at times it can be very dense to get through, and even watching it, if you have questions, then sometimes you need that interaction. So whether it is a modified version, whether it is just resuscitating or bringing back the way it is.
There's value to empowerment too.
Mhm.
If you think beyond just the numbers.
Well, in the communication, and communication is one of the areas that we said that we wanted to focus on, in the transparency and everything else. So we'll add it to the July and have the information. I think it's a good idea. Anything else that people would like to see at future meetings? Okay, then let's see, closing open forum. Then please note the same guidelines apply as stated during the first open forum. Is there anyone that would like to say anything? Did we get any emails?
No emails.
Okay, all right, so then I'm going to move us on to point 11, a motion. Need a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss the superintendent's contract.
Angela, thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Get up.